and I mean this again, total sincerity, I thought yesterday's game was a positive given where this team is right now. I think we can all agree. This team kind of stinks. We know it. We talk about it every single day. This team's no good. This coach is this GM's that, right tackle's this, right tackle. We talk about it again every single day. And yet, watching yesterday, I actually thought it was kind of a positive. I did. And so, again, I know that we don't want to sit there and talk about moral victories and this is the NFL and all of that stuff. But, again, I'm going to tell you, this has been a season where the positives, they really haven't existed much. And I thought yesterday's game was completely decided by the officiating. I'm just going to tell it to you right now because I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, we don't want to complain about the referees and we don't. But sometimes, like the Saints-Rams NFC title game years ago, the one where they allowed you to review for a year pass interference, and then they took it back because it was too hard to officiate. But there are some times where the referees completely decide the game. And it was horrendous yesterday. The officiating took 2 4th downs off the board with, again, objectively bad calls that Gene Steratore didn't agree with. And considering that the Titans punted on the season a month ago, you know, the idea of the playoffs and the winning and the losing, it actually might be a good thing that you lost, but can come out of that feeling good about it, can feel, you know, I think positive that you can blame the refs about it. Like, this is going to sound crazy. Like, if they had lost, we'd be sitting here saying, oh, but the draft position. But if they had won, again, I keep getting the winning and the losing mixed up here. But if they had won, I think I'd be sitting here saying, oh, but the draft position, but there is none of that. We're sitting here right now. They lost the game, so the draft position is still good. Levis played his best game of the year. The Titans as a team played their best game of the season. And it was completely and totally Clete Blakeman and that bullcrap officiating crew. It was completely their fault. And I got no problem in saying that. Now, that doesn't mean it was all good. Because, again, there were some bad things out there. But they didn't win. And I actually think that was a good thing. Levis is improving. I think that might be a good thing. Callahan showed some cojones yesterday, getting up in the ref's face. And I think that might actually be a good thing. Again, wasn't all good. T'Vondre Sweat cost you 4 points by not sacking Sam Darnold and 7 by lining up offside. The right tackle position remains a complete and total unmitigated disaster. I mean, it is such a train wreck. I mean, I knew it was going to be bad coming into the year, and we talked about it every day. I'm not even sure I thought it was going to be this bad. But it is. Levis's anxiety at the end of the game led to a turnover that I didn't like. And I know people are like, well, the game was out of reach anyways. He just throwing the ball down the field. Yeah, okay. But maybe not just throw it up to the other team. And the Vikings, which I have a lot of respect for the Vikings as a franchise, you know, because I know all about the history with Bud Grant and Fran Tarkenton and everything else. So I have a lot of respect for the Vikings. But I find the Vikings to be what I consider a tier 3 fan base. You know, tier 1 is Dallas, Pittsburgh, Green Bay. Tier 2 is Denver. And those, you know, teams that are, Denver's popular around the country. And then there's the Vikings. The tier 3. I mean, tier 3 fan base took over your entire stadium. We saw it on the pregame show. On Sunday, we saw all the bars packed with Viking fans. We saw nothing but purple walking down Broadway, and we saw nothing but purple headed across the walking bridge. Me, Derek, and Chris were looking at it like, it's not very good. But again, there's just some bad things that happen. But other than that, overall, it was good. Improvement, good. The Vikings are a good team. That's what good teams look good. The Vikings look good because they're good. Justin Jefferson is good, and you saw that. NWI had a 98-yard touchdown grab. Levis hit Ridley on another bomb that got called back. But again, it shows progress because for the second week in a row, Levis hit Ridley down the field on a play designed to score a touchdown. And again, while it should have and it didn't, you know that we're more worried about can Levis and Ridley hook up than we are about whether or not Scarbini can line up on side, which that is a concern. So where we sit today, this is the happiest I've been on a Titan Monday all season long. Because I can look at the football team. I asked this all last week. I said, where is the improvement? Where's the improvement in this football team? Brian Callahan had his super secret reasons that this team was improving. But again, when we looked at the numbers, we said well, they're pretty much the same in a lot of categories that they weren't good at. For instance, they allowed 49 sacks last year. They're on pace, or going into yesterday's game, they were on pace to allow 52.8 sacks. So 53 versus 49, that's not that big of a difference. Or their red zone offense going into yesterday was 50%. Last year was 47.9. But their red zone defense was up, and up is bad on defense, up 30%. Their turnovers were up. Their takeaways were down. Their sacks were down. And I kept saying, where's the improvement? Show me some improvement. Show me where your team is better. Again, the super secret improvement, I don't care about that. It's all about Sunday. Yesterday, they showed improvement. That is a good football team. The Minnesota Vikings are a good football team. They are well coached, and I have serious coach envy when it comes to O'Connell. But they are well coached. They have a solid quarterback. They have the best receiver in the game. Addison, I thought he looked pretty good on that touchdown where he ran away from everybody. Their defense, I think defense a little overrated with Minnesota. All I ever hear about is Brian Flores this, Brian Flores that. And again, Will Levis hit a 98-yard touchdown bomb on him. They did stop the run, which again, they're the number one rushing defense. So I'm not going to get too worked up about that and say, oh, the Titans couldn't run or anything like that. I'm a happy camper today. This is the first Titans Monday where I have felt good about the Tennessee Titans. They beat the Dolphins, and I said, oh, that team couldn't pass the ball. That team stunk. And now I'm hearing, oh, my God, Snead locked down Tyreek Hill, all because Snoop Huntley couldn't pass. I knew that was fool's gold. They beat the Patriots in overtime at home. The Patriots are God awful. Awful. You lose in the draft position because of that. Didn't take any solace out of that. Yesterday, I think we got the result. If we're being honest with ourselves, we got the result we wanted. The Titans lost, so the draft status is okay. Levis played a ball game that didn't make you prime your eyeballs out. Callahan coached like a grown-up. And it was a competitive game that got taken away from you by the referees. Would you have won the game if the refs didn't? I don't know. But I'm happy, and you should be too. We've been hard on them all season long, and they have deserved it. They have deserved every ounce of criticism that they have received. In fact, I think, quite frankly, they probably deserve more criticism than they have received this season. But yesterday, I thought was their best game of the year, and I think they should be given credit for that. Yesterday, they showed some improvement, and I think they should be given credit for that. Yesterday, if you want to have hope, I think you got a little hope yesterday. Hope in the coach, maybe hope in the quarterback, hope in the $50 million receiver, even a hope in the big fat DT that, I don't know if it's a good thing that he didn't sack the quarterback when he had him, but at least he got close for the first time. Grading on a curve. And so I'm a happy camper today. 615-737-1025 is how we are starting today's show. 615-737-1025 here on a Titans Monday. Okay. Two things. Number one, we will be giving away Jelly Roll tickets. That's right. Jelly Roll at Bridgestone Arena. Get excited about that. We will be giving away Jelly Roll tickets at Bridgestone Arena later today in the program. I put on Twitter, maybe in the 4 o'clock hour, maybe a little bit later. I don't know. I feel like I kind of get to make the call on that. So we'll be giving away a pair of tickets to see Jelly Roll live at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, November 26th, in a contest supplied by Chiba Hut Subs, serving up dank food and chill vibes, which is now open in Donaldson. And then secondly, let's talk some officiating, because we got to hit on the officiating. I hear people say, oh, don't blame the officials. Don't. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
They like crossing routes if they choose to pass in this situation.
Lone setback is Ty Chandler. Darnold fakes the pitch. They protect. Simmons coming. That pass incomplete. Addison was leveled by Baker. You see the flag come out quickly.
But I think that was Brown. I think Brown hits him in the chest.
You're right. It was Mike Brown.
I think Brown hits him in the chest. I got to see that again, but I think he hits him right in the chest. You see number 44 come in.
Personal foul, unnecessary roughness, defense number 44.
That should not be.
Half the distance to the goal line, automatic first down.
That should not be a personal foul. He hits him right in the chest. There is zero head and neck area involved in that hit.
Did the upper part of the helmet hit the bottom of the face mask?
Listen, to me, he hits him right in the strike zone. You got it. I mean, that to me is textbook defense. He hits him right in the chest.
That's exactly what Brian Callahan is complaining about. Boy, Callahan has to be restrained by his assistant coaches, physically held back. He is irate.
I don't blame him. You know, I know it's a fine line when it comes to hitting wide receivers in a defenseless position, but Callahan is saying right now, potentially, you have a potential right here to get a big fourth down stop and keep this a 7-3 game. And you know, this is one of those instances where I wish somebody would be able to call down and change this call, but that to me, I don't see how you can play it any better if you're Mike Brown.
Tennessee coach. Half the distance to the goal line. First down.
Okay, let's talk officiating. That right there was horrendous. I saw the hit in live time. Adam Archuleta on the broadcast saw the hit in live time. I mean, you listen to that cut. It's incomplete, and there's a flag. And Archuleta's like, I don't think he launched. I don't think he hit to the head and neck area. It's not like Archuleta waited to see a replay before he started saying, I don't see what they're talking about. He was immediately like, I don't think this is very good. And there are certain things about the officiating yesterday I'm not going to complain about. I am not going to complain about the illegal formation penalties on Isaiah Prince. I'll take their word for it. I saw Blake Bedingfield wrote a story at paulkaharski.com. He kind of questioned the one that wiped out the touchdown. But you know what? I'll take your word for it. Because, again, that guy is standing right there on the line. He is looking right at that guy's helmet. He can see the waistline of the center. So, fine. I'm not going to get you on that one. I'm not going to dispute the first Jarvis Brownlee penalty, which I thought way too many of the Boo-Hoo Titan crew was just, in tears, just crying about that after they called the Brownlee penalty. Again, you cannot lock your hands with Justin Jefferson to keep him from turning around to make a play on the ball. You can't do that. That's Justin Jefferson. You're going to get flagged. I'm not going to complain about that. I thought it was clear DPI. If I was the ref, I would have thrown the flag, and that led to the first Viking touchdown. But then there was the Mike Brown hit. I thought the Mike Brown hit was one of the best plays I have seen a Titan make over the last 3 years. I think that's the kind of tape that in training camp, the coaches should show their teams and say, this is how you hit a guy. Right there in the chest plate, you go right at him. You do not lead with the helmet. You do not launch off your feet, but you knock them as hard as you can. There were a couple. There was a penalty they called on Jaquan Jackson, or they called it on the Vikings for a hit on Jaquan Jackson, where Jaquan Jackson was still in bounds. They called it. I'm like, you might as well just say personal foul, too hard of a hit on the defense. The play Mike Brown made on a fourth down that gives you the ball back, that is the kind of play that if you win this game, gets you a game ball. That is the kind of play that everybody remembers. Hey, Mike Brown gets a game ball because he made that play. And the refs just blew it. Just blew it. 7 points off the board. Then the second Brownlee illegal contact. I must have watched that play 13 times. That's just football. Was it beyond the 5 yards? Was it a little too much hands? It's just football. That's just a football play. And they threw a flag on it. 14 points. 7 on the Brown hit, 7 on the Brownlee DPI, and you lost by 10. And I'm just going to say this. If this was a Dallas Cowboy game or a Monday Night Football game or yesterday's Josh Allen Patrick Mahomes game, the entire country would be in uproar about what happened yesterday. Instead, nobody noticed. And Clete Blakeman, who, again, the NFL pushes Clete Blakeman out there like he's Roger Goodell's son. He refs the Super Bowl or the conference title game every other year. And I thought after yesterday's performance, nobody on that crew deserves to work in the playoffs. Nobody. That was a Jerome Boger classic. And yet, guess what? Ian, I'm going to guarantee something right now. I didn't think I was going to guarantee, but I'm going to do it right now.
Okay, fun.
I guarantee Clete Blakeman will work a divisional round game, a conference championship game, or the Super Bowl. I guarantee it. Because the NFL loves him. And I don't know why. Because he has been stinky for years. The NFL loves him, and they love Bill Vinovich. And I don't know why. But again, there's not going to be any consequence for what happened yesterday. And I will say this, they were bad for both teams. Like the hit on Jaquan Jackson. But to have the officiating decide it like that, when again, even Gene's their guy, even Gene Steratore is sitting there saying, yeah, those are bad calls. That was a travesty. And you can't say that I am. You cannot say Jared Stillman is a crybaby who's blaming the referees because they lost a game because he loves his team and he's a crybaby. You can't say that because last week the Titans got screwed by the officials and you didn't hear me say, well, that changed the outcome of the game, or, well, the officiating cost the game, or, well, you didn't hear me say any of that because I didn't think that fumble decided the game in Los Angeles last week. It was a terrible call. Terrible on review. I think it was totally bullcrap. And I think if it was the other way around and it was it was Will Levis who threw that, they'd call it a fumble and a touchdown for the Chargers. But I didn't think that it ended the game. I didn't think it affected the game. This one I do think truly affected the game. Now, before you give me the NFL is rigged and they hate the Titans and all of that, before you give me all that, I am going to tell you I don't believe any of that. I just think they sucked yesterday. And that's why I don't think Clete Blakeman or his crew should sniff the playoffs this year. And as I already guaranteed, Clete Blakeman will be reffing probably the Super Bowl this year. And you heard it here first. He will be reffing the Super Bowl. And I feel bad for every player in that locker room. And I feel bad for Will Levis. And I feel bad for Brian Callahan. And I feel bad for Mike Brown. Because I thought they got screwed yesterday by the officials. That's the kind of game where, again, I call it how I see it. I don't care what everybody else says the expectation should be in terms of, the expectation should be that you never blame officiating for a loss. I don't do that. If I think you got screwed by the refs, I'm going to say you got screwed by the refs. Yesterday, you got screwed by the refs. You should have won that game. And the NFL ought to make an example out of Clete Blakeman and his crew, the way they did years ago with Walt Anderson and his crew when they messed up a Ravens-Seahawks game. They ought to make an example out of Clete Blakeman and his crew, and they ought to send that Mike Brown hit to every single team in the league. And they should say, this is how you hit. Because, again, that's football. I saw somebody yesterday take a shot in the back. I think it was T. Higgins in the Sunday Night Football game. I'm like, that one hurt. But that's football. The Mike Brown hit. Mike Brown just knocks the crap out of people. He knocked the crap out of Jordan Addison along the sideline, early in the game. That's football. That's why we like football. That's why we watch football. And instead, Clete Blakeman, I mean, that freaking sorry-ass crew yesterday, they ought to lose a game check, and they ought to be banned from the playoffs. And then the pool report was equally as embarrassing. And I think pool reports are bullcrap anyways. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Let's get to some phones. We will do that coming up. Your reaction from yesterday and Brian Callahan. He did something. You know, I've criticized a lot of the things that Brian Callahan's done so far. There is something that he did yesterday that I actually saw, and I said, you know what? I got to tip my cap. We'll get to that coming up next. This week's Nashville's Best Deals, Bavarian Beer House, Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, and a place full of food, fun, music, and most importantly, beer. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats, giant pretzels, and more in their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last.
When you engaged with the officials so harshly after the end zone call, was there dialogue there? Were they not answering it? The crowd certainly seemed to like what you were doing.
Yeah, no, they they get in those moments and they just let you yell at them, and they don't really say much. So at that point, the call had already been made. We already had a first down, so I figured I'd let them hear it. It wasn't going to cost me anything at that point.
Good for Brian Callahan. I just want to say that. Good for Brian Callahan yesterday to get up in the referee's Kool-Aid because they deserved it. They deserved to get the business. And for Brian Callahan, for somebody who, again, I really like and I really root for and I really hope good things happen for him. I do. I'm serious about that. I know people are like, Jared, you keep saying that and I'm not sure I believe it. And that's fine. That's your business. But finally, there's something he did where I say, I like it. I stand behind it. I'm here for it. That was Bobby Cox out of the dugout where the third base coach had to hold him back. Finally, Brian Callahan acted like a grown-up coach and showed some chutzpah out there on the field. And when you watch the video, I think it was Kayla Anderson posted. When you watch the video that Kayla posted, I mean, you see, like he was out by the numbers. He was yelling. What's funny is whoever that strength coach was that's supposed to be the one to hold him back, he did a weak-ass job of that. He needs to step it up a little bit. You need to be more authoritative when it comes to holding Brian Callahan back. And then if you also watch the little Kayla Anderson Twitter video, what's hilarious is Colt Anderson comes up at the end and just stands there like he's going to do something about it. Like, sit your ass over there, you bum. That Colt Anderson. But what I really liked about what Callahan did yesterday was I felt like it was calculated. They already throw the flag, so it's already first down. The ball's already at the 1-inch line. So what, are they going to move it to the half-an-inch line? He knew that the worst that could happen with a penalty like that, again, was to move the ball a half an inch. And it's already first down. And in the moment, he looked so furious and angry and letting them have it like he was out of control. It looked like there was no way that he thought that through. And I'm here to tell you, he totally thought it through. He totally knew when he saw the hit, when he probably saw something on the Jumbotron or somebody said something in his headset or somebody said that was a legal hit. He knew it was a first down. He knew the ball was on the inch line, and he knew I'm getting my money's worth because I'm not going to hurt the team by getting a 15-yard penalty. And I think those guys really took that, and good on them and good on him. It was finally time somebody in this organization, instead of pumping sunshine when it's not necessary, it's finally time somebody stood up and said, enough with the bull crap, and I'm going to let you hear about it. And Brian Callahan did. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Michael is going to kick us off here on a Titans Monday. Michael, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. And real quick before I get to it, I think that was the first game all year where the special teams wasn't just an abject disaster. The punting was pretty good. The kicking was good. There was not a single point in the game where I said, man, like, what are we doing out here? And that's the first time all year that I've probably been able to say that. But the first thing that this team needs to do in the offseason, or maybe even earlier if they've got the opportunity, we got to extend Nick Westbrook-Akine. I mean, he is just the heart and soul of this team, it seems, at this point, because of his story. He shows up to work. He does his job. He's quiet. He does everything that's been asked of him. He was basically the wide receiver 5 to start the year off, and now he's basically the wide receiver 2. Sometimes he's got better games than Ridley. He did yesterday. But I really hope that we re-sign him to like a small 3-year, $30 million deal or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers, but
I'm not giving NWI $10 million. I'm not giving NWI $10 million, but I hear what you're saying, and I do appreciate your call. And I'll say this about NWI. You know, I don't want to sit up here and say, like, I was right, because there are a lot of things I'm wrong about. There's more things I'm right about. And again, we'll talk about right tackle later today. And, I was kind of right about right tackle. But I remember during training camp, when they were trying to make Traylon Burks a thing. They were trying to make fetch happen. And I remember when DeAndre got hurt, and I kept saying, hold on now, this needs to be a competition between NWI and Burks. No, Jared. They need to see what they have in Burks. As if we didn't already know. A dude that's got a legitimate amount of talent, who never catches the ball and can't stay healthy. Whereas NWI just, again, reliable. And I kept saying to everybody in the local media at training camp, I kept saying, okay, if you had to bet your house on Traylon Burks or NWI producing, who would you bet it on? And they all said NWI. So why waste time with Burks? Why waste time with what you already know? It's not like Burks is a rookie. It's not like you weren't giving Burks a mulligan for his rookie year last year. And so now that NWI's gotten out there, NWI is the best receiver they have on this team right now. And that includes Ridley. As far as production is concerned. So, again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I thought that NWI, when he was an undrafted free agent out of Indiana, was going to be any good. But I am telling you, these are things that the Callahan coaching staff had to learn the hard way because they thought they could coach up Traylon Burks, and there wasn't anybody, Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, that had experienced it that was saying, no, trust us on this one. I was saying it on the air, but apparently, again, the people that actually are in the building, they can't look at the coaching. The coaching staff didn't know these guys coming into this year. They're not supposed to know these guys. They're a new coaching staff. And I do wonder how much it hurt the Titans that they wasted time on all this. One texter says, I was clapping when Callahan showed some attitude on the sideline. It reminded me of Peter Laviolette when he would show some fire from the bench. Joey from Bellevue says, Bryce Oliver has made more plays in 2 games than Traylon Burks has made the last 2 seasons. Let me say this about Bryce Oliver, and I tweeted this out yesterday during the game when it happened. When I was at training camp, there would be, the one-on-ones where the DB goes up against the wide receiver and they have all 3 quarterbacks throwing the ball. And there were a handful of times during training camp where they give you this long, legal sheet that has the entire roster on it. So again, everybody knows who number 8 is. Everybody knows, when Derrick Henry was on the team, who number 22 is. But all of a sudden, there's some guy out there, number 76. It's like, who the hell's that? Oh, that's Johnny Joseph from Eastern Lafayette Tech, an undrafted free agent. And I remember in those one-on-ones about once a day for about a week, I kept saying, who the hell is number 80? And I take out the little thing and say, oh, Bryce Oliver. Every time. I was like, who the hell is that? Finally, I didn't even have to look anymore for number 80. Bryce Oliver has produced in training camp. And I can tell you that because I was there. TD will tell you the same thing. He produced in the preseason games. And now that he's gotten an opportunity in the regular season games, he's producing. And Bryce Oliver is a guy who in this lost season, I would like to see the Titans give more of an opportunity to, more of a role to, because Bryce Oliver might be somebody who can make the roster next year and contribute to the team. No more wasting time on guys that always suck. Burks and Chig and Wiley and Spears. No, let's get the guys in there that actually produce. Also, I think we need to have a conversation about Spears and how little he contributes.
Hurt again.
I mean,
huh?
What's that?
He got hurt again, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't do anything. Like when he runs the ball, he'll pick up 4 yards, maybe. I mean, who would you rather have running the ball, him or Pollard? I mean, everybody would rather have Pollard run the ball. And then in the receiving game, I mean, again, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a hater. Maybe I'm just for whatever it is. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Let's get more into your phones. And also, there is kind of one thing about yesterday that bothered me, which we'll get to. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
All right, let's bring in Gene's territory. Gene, this is a tough one for the defense. What do you think?
It is, Adam, and I think Arch is right, too. And, you know, when Mike Brown takes off, he launches a little, but he makes really good shoulder contact to the chest. These plays are really hard to officiate, and I can tell you when he leaves his feet there and officials thinking it feels like a launch, and it's just so close, they throw. And I also agree with Adam, like on these plays, look, they're so close and fine line that you'd like to see him throw, and we see Darnold go in for the touchdown there, guys. You'd like to see the official throw and maybe replay come in and take them off of that foul after they've thrown it.
Good job, Gene. Let me just say this. If Gene Steratore is going to get on there and say, yeah, that was a bad call. Yeah, they blew it. If old Gino is going to do that, then you know it was a bad call. Then you know that the referees blew it. Because Gene Steratore, I mean, he's part of the brotherhood. And they do not criticize if they do not have to. And even Gene was like, well, you know, that's a... By the way, there's one thing that Gene said that drove me crazy. Ian, can we play that Gene cut again? There's one thing, and I'll tell you when to stop it. There's one thing in this that just drives me freaking bananas. Play the cut.
All right, let's bring in Gene's territory. Gene, this is a tough one for the defense. What do you think?
It is, Adam, and I think Arch is right, too. And, you know, when Mike Brown takes off, he launches a little, but he makes really good shoulder contact to the chest. These plays are really hard to officiate, and I can tell you when he leaves his feet.
These plays are really hard to officiate. Well, football is hard to play. That's why the guys that are good at it make $55 million a year, because it's hard to play. And guess what? We criticize the crap out of them too. So, I mean, the referees, is there a more protected class of person than referee in the National Football League? They do no press conferences. In fact, the white hat is the only one who talks to the press. He talks to one guy, and I guarantee you, they say, hey, let's find the most harmless person. Well, I wouldn't say Nick Suss is the most harmless person. He and Deion Sanders did get into it after all. But, I mean, again, it's like a writer who's it's not going to be some guy. It's not going to be me interviewing the referee. They are not going to let me talk to the white hat after the game in the pool report. But, again, here's Gene saying, well, I mean, these are really hard calls to make. Right, and that's why they're in the NFL to make them and not doing Hillwood High School games, because it's a hard call to make. And again, this has got to be one of those things on something like that where when the referees come together, there's a guy up in the booth who buzzes down and says, yeah, no, don't do that. Last week, I watched the Vikings play the Jags, and Mac Jones had a fumble, and they returned it for a touchdown. Mac Jones got upset, hit the ground. They showed the replay, clearly hit the ground. And the white hat comes up and says, you know, expedited review, the ball hit the ground. We don't need to go to commercial. We don't need 30 seconds to tell you about Lowe's. No, let's go. We can do that in the NFL. One texter says, can we, for the love of God, cut Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
He actually puts PT in there. Can we, for the love of God, cut PT and let him concentrate on his fantasy gig? I mean, look, man. They thought PT was the guy. Like, they thought that PT was their guy, so they're going to have to live with it. Like, the Broncos thought Bo Nix was their guy. And if Bo Nix wasn't their guy at quarterback, by the way, Bo Nix lit it up yesterday. But they thought Bo Nix was their guy. And if Bo Nix wasn't their guy, there is no alternative. I mean, I guess there's Tannehill. But there was no alternative. It's Bo Nix. This is what you went into the season with. Sorry, that's on you. That's what they did with PT. And I heard Brian Callahan talking about it yesterday, as if we're supposed to feel sorry for him or feel sorry for them, that right tackle has been such an unmitigated disaster. And I got no sympathy for the Titans. And I got no sympathy for Brian Callahan. Again, it's not like I didn't try to tell him, hey, man, you need a right tackle. One texter says 13 points, and that's good? Question mark. Look, man, again, I'm not going to sit here and say if this hadn't happened, because that is what losers do. To say, oh, well, if the refs hadn't taken away the illegal formation penalty, and again, I'm going to have to take their word for it that Isaiah Prince, whoever the hell that is, was lined up, incorrectly. But yeah, against the Viking defense that everybody told me, Brian Flores in their defense, and it's, oh my God. Yeah. I am pleased with what I saw out of the offense. I am pleased with what I saw out of Ridley, NWI. We know the line sucks. We know the tight ends suck. We know you're not going to run the ball in the Vikings. I'm fine with it. Chris says, I am tired of going to Nissan Stadium to feel like I am watching the game on the road. It is embarrassing, the texter says. Well, let me say this when it comes to fan takeovers. Number one, there's no way to stop it anymore. The way that tickets are now digitally transferred and the secondary market and the internet it is impossible to keep visiting fans out of your stands. Number two, I find the Vikings to be a tier 3 fan base. Tier 1 is Dallas and San Francisco and the Raiders and the Bears and the Packers and the Steelers, right? Like those are probably the most popular teams, and they've been popular because they were dynastic at some point in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, something like that. There are other fan bases that are very large for whatever reason. That's a tier 2 fan base. Detroit. The Vikings, in my opinion, are a tier 3 fan base. They're not you. They're not Atlanta. They're not Jacksonville. They're not Carolina. But they're not, when I think of the best fan bases, I don't think of Minnesota. And when that many Minnesota fans show up, what that tells me is that there are a lot of Titan fans that had season tickets and said, I ain't watching this crap anymore. I'm not going to park across the river now because you took away my parking lot. I'm not going to park across the river and walk across the bridge and spend all day watching that bull crap where you put PT out there at right tackle. That is the message that I hope the owner took away from the fans yesterday. Because I've never seen a tier 3 fan base take over that stadium like that. 615-737-1025 on Stillman and Company on a Titans Monday. I got to tell you, after the game yesterday, my dad said something to me that I think many Titan fans believe. And I am disappointed in my own father. I'm saying it right now. I am disappointed in my own father over something he said yesterday after the game and really towards the end of the game. And we'll get to it next. And I think a lot of Titan fans feel that way. Stillman and Company, Titans Monday, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Titans Monday. And Ian, I got to put my own father on blast.
Uh-oh.
You know I love my dad. And, and let me just say this before I get into this. TD put out there yesterday on Twitter that his mom passed away recently. I did not know that until I saw that. I texted TD yesterday. But I'm thinking about TD, and one of the things is TD and I was texting TD yesterday just about how much I was thinking about him and how sorry I was to hear that. And I said to TD, TD sent me a text from his mom a couple weeks ago when he was checking in to see how she was doing, and she was upset with how the Eagles were playing. And I told TD, I said, I definitely do not take it for granted being able to watch the games on Sundays with my old man, the way that I used to when I was 10 years old. And now I'm 35 years old, and we're still watching the games on Sunday, and I absolutely do not take it for granted. And I just, again, wanted to mention that about TD because I am thinking a lot about him. But I'm going to put my dad on blast. Yesterday, during the end of the game, at some point, he just threw his hands up and said, I am so tired of Levis. And then after the game, he said he's done with Will Levis, said he's sick and tired of watching Will Levis play football. He's sick and tired of watching the Titans get the same results. He never thought the Titans were going to win the game on Sunday with Will Levis at quarterback. And I couldn't believe him. I mean, I could still picture it in my head yesterday, him sitting in the chair after 20 minutes after the game was over, being like, I'm done with Levis. And thinking to myself, after that? Like, I pushed back because I thought yesterday was Will Levis's best game of the season. And probably the best game Will Levis has played since the Falcons game, which was the first game of his NFL career. In my opinion, Will Levis took care of the ball for the most part, though I did not like that interception at the end of the game. He was effective at times running, and he'll never learn not to take hits. But he aired it out yesterday down the field. We've been saying, where are the wow plays? Where's pushing the ball down the field? Where's showing us that electric arm? And he did it. He got sacked, 5 times yesterday? But I never thought Levis was afraid of the pass rush. And that happens to veteran quarterbacks. Like, I remember watching Ryan Tannehill and thinking, this guy is scared to death of the rush. And Levis, who knows it's coming, he's not scared to death of it. He didn't fold early, and things were bad before the NWI 98-yard touchdown. But he didn't fold. And so I thought yesterday was a very positive performance for Will Levis. And I told my dad that. I said, wait a minute. He hit the 98-yard bomb. He had the 60-yard pass to Ridley that got called back because Dopey couldn't line up right. I mean, he didn't turn the ball over much. He did, they got the Vikings defense with Brian Flores. They have a reputation as one of the best defenses in the league. And he didn't care. He didn't care. I was actually a little surprised. He said it's time for a change. I have always said that I'm just going to call it how I see it. And when it comes to the Titans and what's up with Levis and what's wrong and what's going to be and what's going to... The right tackle problem, not his fault. And it cost him a 60-yard touchdown yesterday. The officiating, Cleek Blakeman's bullcrap crew, not his fault. Tavondre Sweat lining up offsides, not his fault. The Titans wasting a second-round pick. Wasting might be a little strong, but the Titans using 2 premium of a pick on Tavondre Sweat when they need, a right tackle or a tight end or playmakers, not his fault. And yes, I know the quarterback's job is to win, but I don't believe a single second-year quarterback, maybe in the history of the NFL, maybe Burrow, maybe Manning, but I don't think a second-year quarterback with this right tackle and this tight end group has any chance to be successful. And again, my dad doesn't care. My dad's done. He's out on Levis. It actually reminds me, I remember when my dad was out on Marcus. It was the Colts game, year 2, 2019. The one where Marcus spiked the ball on third down. That was the game where my dad gave up on Levis, on Mariota, and I was like, yeah, that's a little harsh. And then Floyd just crushed Mariota the next day, and then I started to realize, I think I might be in the minority here on Marcus. But he's done. And let me just say this. I don't completely disagree. Because I've said several times this year that I think Will Levis is probably a backup in the NFL. He's probably not a starting quarterback. And again, yesterday I thought was a step in the right direction. I thought it was positive. But I absolutely didn't think like yesterday was proof now that Will Levis is going to be a franchise quarterback. I'm a little worried because Amy's future son-in-law is in the front office and he and Levis are buddies. And so I worry a little bit about that, affecting the owner maybe. But as far as I'm concerned, I think, again, he hasn't done enough to be the starting quarterback next year. And until he starts winning some games, I can't go that far. But I do think when it comes to Levis that he is a symptom and not a cause of the Titans' problems. Will Levis was given too much by an overeager coaching staff that thought they could coach him into Joe Burrow. They thought they could coach him the way that he coached Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. And by the way, I don't know if you guys watched the game last night, but you definitely have Cincinnati's offensive line. Holy crap, do they stink. But they thought they could coach him like Joe Burrow. They can't. They could not, going into the year, in my opinion, objectively evaluate what his limitations were. And then again, you got a front office that burns premium picks on guards who don't know how to read the room and defensive tackles that don't know how to line up on fourth down, and they've ignored right tackle and ignored tight end. And I mean, I got a text from a former coach in the NFL the night of the draft. And I'm not saying Latham's a bad pick. I'm not. And Latham's done a good job. And that's a person that you can, put towards the future as, hey, it's a good thing they have J.C. Latham. But when the Titans were on the clock, when the Chargers got on the clock at 5, I flipped my phone over. Because, they tipped the picks on draft night. In fact, Robbie Stanley said that he saw on Twitter that the Chargers were taking Joe Alt, and he turned on the draft show because he knew I was going to lose it when the Chargers took Joe Alt. So I turned my phone over so nobody would text me and nobody would tip anything. And I'd hear it in the headset that Roger Goodell was saying who the Chargers were picking, the Giants were picking, the Titans were picking, all in live time. And when I flipped my phone back over, I had a message from a former head coach in the NFL, an offensive guy. And he said, take the tight end out of Georgia. He's going to the Hall of Fame. Brock Bowers just set a rookie record yesterday for receptions in a game. You have Chig. Like this front office, they don't know. They don't think a young quarterback needs a tight end. And that's not Levis's fault. So the right tackle position, that's not his fault. The stinky officiating yesterday, that's not his fault. The lack of a tight end, that's not all his fault. So if you want to pin all this on Levis and why you didn't win yesterday or why your team stinks, Dad, personally, I don't think you're fairly evaluating the situation and the why. The cause, not the symptom. I'm not worried about the symptoms. Because again, if you take a Will Levis, what was the deal with Will Levis? Will Levis was drafted in the second round, and he was thought maybe he could be the future, and he had a couple of bright moments, and all of a sudden, the franchise starts telling you he's their guy. Well, again, that's an overeager front office trying to look good for the press, trying to look good for the fans, trying to tell the owner there's something there, when Will Levis hadn't proven any of the things that, again, the fans were getting excited about and the front office was egging on. That's a symptom, not a cause. I thought yesterday was the best he played all year. And I'm convinced the last 2 weeks do show some growth. Again, maybe not enough to justify him being a quarterback next year for this football team. Kind of hopeful that he's not. Or even being on the team next year. I'm not sure that he's solidified that either. Because again, we saw with Washington, Sam Howell was their starter last year. They moved on when they went with a rookie quarterback, get more of a veteran in there, etc. But the Titans didn't lose yesterday because of Will Levis. I actually thought Will Levis gave him a chance to win. And there haven't been a lot of games like that this year where I've walked away from it and said, hey, I think Levis gave him a chance to win. Yesterday was that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. We'll get to your phones on this. And then the real conundrum that comes with Will Levis and what he did yesterday and the growth and the things that Brian Callahan gets really excited about. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025 again.
And now you got Jonathan Grenard, one of the better pass rushers in the league, going to work on third down.
Levis taking a shot. He's got Westbrook Akine breaking free. And the Tennessee Titans right back in it. 98 yards. Will Levis with a home run ball to Westbrook Akine, and the Titans up off the mat. 7-point game.
That is something that I didn't expect for 500 Spear. Unbelievable job catching the Vikings in a blitz, and Westbrook Akine makes them pay.
I'm going to be honest on that play. When I saw the Vikings and they were bringing pressure on third down and Levis is in the shotgun, great job by Trent Sherfield of Minnesota on the punt. Now, this is what good special teams looks like. The guy from Minnesota, fields the ball, great body control, puts it at the 1. Everybody and their grandma knows the Titans are going to try to move the pile. They're going to try to move the ball off the goal line. Of course, they were lucky that Tony Pollard got the football. He didn't get himself out of the end zone, but he got the football out of the end zone on first down. And then it's third down. And I'm like, oh boy. And I see Levis, and he's lined up in the shotgun. And I see the blitz from Minnesota. They didn't hide what they were doing. And I said, this is not going to end well. Like, this is going to be one of I was like, this play may end up on one of the blooper reels of all time. I'm like, this is dangerous. And he threw a 98-yard touchdown pass to NWI. So, again, and I think that catapulted him, but it was a good throw. And it was a bad play by the defensive back from Minnesota. And it was a good catch by NWI, and he just kept running down the sidelines. That's what happens. You engage 8, you leave 3 on the back. You leave 3 on the backside, one guy jumps up for the ball and he doesn't get it. NWI's taking it to the house. Good for him. But there is no denying for me that this was the best game Will Levis has played this year. And it was a tangible step forward. Which takes me to what I call the Will Levis conundrum, which is this. If Will Levis plays like this the rest of the season, you're going to have a problem on your hands. The Titans are going to have a problem on their hands. Number one, they're going to win some more games. Minnesota is a good team. Minnesota probably gets to the divisional round of the NFC playoffs and loses to maybe a little bit more talented team like a Detroit. But Minnesota's good. So if Levis plays like that against Jacksonville, you're going to win. So now we talk about the number 1 pick and Shedeur Sanders, or we talk about Cam Ward, or we talk about this one or that one, and you're not going to be able to pick that guy because Levis is going to win some more games. The second issue of the Levis conundrum is there will be signs, and I think yesterday was one of these, that allow you to say, if you want to make this argument, well, now that Levis has gotten into the system, and now that Callahan has started now Callahan knows him, that now it's starting to come together a little bit. That was something we said in the preseason. I said, hey, this is going to take some time now. You're going to have to be patient with him learning the system and the coaches learning him and all of that. And if the Titans had just won games they should have won, Chicago, the Jets, the Colts at home, if they had just won some of those games along the way, then they'd have 5 wins right now, 6 wins, and they'd be in the hunts. And we'd be saying, hey, now he's starting to get it together. Now he's starting to go a little bit. And my gut tells me, if he gives her the chance, like if he really gives her the chance, Amy might give him another shot. Because this is a weak quarterback class. The Titans have so many holes because they waste their picks on crappy guards that I can see the Titans telling themselves, no, You know, it's and the free agent, Daniel Jones. And I can see this being a problem. And I don't want Levis to come back, but I'm also not ruling out the fact that he's getting better. I'm not ignoring that. I'm not telling you that's not what's happening because I'm watching it. And I do think he's getting better. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. That's 615-737-1025. Jared in Spring Hill. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jared, go ahead.
I know you're going to disagree with this, but I've seen enough, okay? And as a fan, I want something to believe in. I can't believe in these guys. Levis just got back to what he was last year. Now, give me Dion. Give me Shadur. Call him up. Hey, Dion, we're drafting Shadur, and you can come coaching, or you can't. But if I'm Amy, I'm opening up the whole city to Deion Sanders. Bring it in, build it here, because somebody else is going to do it. And I want to be the team that does it. I know you hate the circus, but I want that. I want the legends that Deion hangs out with. I want all the stuff that comes with it.
What does that do for you in the NFL, though? What does that do for you in the NFL?
He's the CEO. He's the culture. He has other guys play calling around him. Trust me. And everybody's preaching patience. Take Shadur. Patience. Let Deion get a couple drafts. Let him get his guys in. Let him establish that culture before the stadium, because these guys right here are not moving any needles. Okay? Callahan, Rand, none of these guys. And I know you hate the circus, and it can go either way. Okay? But that's what I want. As a fan, give me something I can believe in. Look at what Deion has done in the last two stops. He could build something that is going to get you competitive here quickly. And that's what I
So Derek and I were talking about this. Thank you for your call. So Derek and I were talking about this yesterday off the air, about Shadur Sanders and Colorado and everything else. And look, Colorado is better than I thought they were going to be. But I watched the Colorado-Utah game. Shadur had a couple of nice throws. But I really felt like that game was Travis Hunter versus everybody else. And everybody keeps telling me Colorado is so much better than they were last year. And I'm wondering, are they? Or are they just not playing Oregon and Michael Penix and Caleb Williams and the Pac-12? Because, I mean, what's happened in college football, and I don't really feel like you can argue this, what's happened in college football is there's become two mega conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC. And the Big Ten's legit, Oregon, Ohio State, and the SEC's legit. And then there's the ACC and the Big 12. And the ACC and the Big 12 are kind of the same. I was actually thinking about this watching the Louisville game, and boy, did they implode on Saturday night. But Louisville was 6-2 or 6-3 or whatever. And I believe Colorado's 7-3 or 7, somewhere around there. And I'm like, I know good football. Louisville football ain't good. I know it. Like, I know this is not a good football team. It's not a bad football team. It's not a good football team. But they're still going to win, 7 ACC games this year. Why? Because the ACC kind of blows. And I look at the Big 12, and I'm like, Big 12 kind of blows. Who's the best team in the Big 12? They got one. Congratulations. You're not playing Oregon anymore. You're playing UCF and Arizona. And then when it comes to Deion, again, if you hire him to run your college, it becomes the University of Deion Sanders. If you hire him to run your NFL team, it becomes the New Orleans Deions. And I just don't believe that works in pro sports. In fact, I'm trying to think, is there a pro sports team where the star is the coach and the coach embraces it? I'm not sure there is. Phil Jackson was never the star of his teams. It was Michael and it was Kobe. Bill Belichick was the star, but he didn't embrace it. And not only that, we know who the real star was. I don't think this daddy's ball thing, I don't think that works in the NFL. And I don't think Dion, again, the NFL, it's different than college. In college, your media is your local TV stations and a local paper and a local beat guy. And then it's all go ColoradoBuffaloes.com/message board. In the pros, it's a little different. There are expectations. You can't just decide like, oh, I don't want to talk to this columnist anymore. Don't work like that in the pros. And again, I don't think Dion could handle that. But that's just me. So, no, I'm not interested in Dion. One texter says, Jared, I'm cautiously optimistic on Levis's progress over the past 2 games. Independent of the current offensive line situation, how are we sure that Levis is running the full Callahan playbook? Seems like we open up the playbook more with Rudolph under center. Based on what? Rudolph sucks. So I don't know what it is that you're saying. Like, well, with Rudolph, he's able to. I don't know what you're talking about. Another texter says, Jared, you are talking out of both sides of your mouth. When you sit there and you talk about the offensive line being the worst in football, and yet you expect Levis not to stink. Even if Tom Brady played on the Titans with this line, he would still stink. How can Levis win with this offensive line and the receivers? Again, Tom Brady could not win with this offensive line, and he would get killed. Tom Brady played behind a bad offensive line his last year in the league. They won the division. They were not a good football team. I want to say they were 8-9. They made the playoffs, got crushed by Dallas in the first round. And Brady was doing everything he could to keep that team together. So I agree. This offensive line is so bad, and that is not Will Levis's fault. But how can you say I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth when in the last segment, I literally said it's not his fault that they screwed up on the right tackle position. It's not his fault that they've just ignored tight end. They weren't interested in going after Hunter Henry in free agency. They weren't interested in pursuing a real tight end. They said, well, we got Chig. Yeah. Woo. Chig in 3 years has like 17 catches and 16 drops. 615-737-1025. More of your phones on a Titans Monday, 615-737-1025. There is one thing Levis said yesterday. I did feel bad for him. I did feel bad for him when he said this, which we'll get to next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
Does this loss feel different for you coming out of a game where you feel like you played pretty well compared to some of the
I don't know. I mean, honestly, like I feel like last week in terms of just how I threw the ball, I was more accurate and I made some better decisions here and there. But I was a little frustrated with a couple of the balls that I'm going to be watching on tape. But I just all I want to do is win, man. Like there's nothing else matters, and it's been frustrating. It's been tough, but I mean, I haven't won a game this year. Like I'm chasing that feeling, and I'm doing everything I can to get there.
Boy, when Will Levis puts it in perspective like that and says, I haven't won a game this year, I'm like, damn. Like, that's bad. Like, again, I know that I said before the start of the season, I said, hey, we need patience with the young quarterback. Then he gave away the game against Chicago, and I was like, uh-oh. I was like, this is not. Again, I was hopeful that Will Levis could be a franchise quarterback, not just a guy who's on the team. And I was like, after that, I'm like, Dan Marino didn't play like that first game of his second year. Then he rolled the ball against the Jets, and I thought, hey, he might be stupid. Then I saw the other games, and I'm like, man, he stinks. Like he's and now he's gotten better. I actually thought he performed well against the Chargers. Again, I thought he got a C, which was better than the D's and the F's that I thought he was getting throughout the course of the year. And then, again, I was impressed yesterday, thought it was the best game he's played this year. But then he says something like, I haven't won a game this year. And I'm like, yeah, it's November. And it's not even like it's November 1st. And he still hasn't won a ball game this year. That's not good. But I am going to say this. With the acknowledgement that I think that Levis is probably a backup. I don't think he had any chance to succeed this year. Jared, this year is all about figuring out whether or not Levis is the guy. And then you don't get him a right tackle? I mean, again, they didn't get him a right guard. They got him Sadiq Charles. Whoa. No right guard, no right tackle, no tight end, no Derrick Henry. High expectations, and a front office and head coach that talked a bunch of bullcrap about how good they would be this offseason, only raising those expectations. The special teams coach is a complete and total failure. And that's a Titans problem. That's not necessarily a Levis problem. And yet again, the Titans are still going to have to make a decision at the end of the year about whether or not they think this guy's any good. And I just don't know how you do that when your team sucks so bad, when your front office is so inept. 615-737-1025. Let's go to Jacob, who's up next here on the program. Jacob, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
How are we doing, Jared?
Good, go.
I got a question about Cam Ward. Do we feel that Cam Ward could take over Levis's position?
I mean, do I think he could play quarterback on the Titans and be good at it, or I think that Cam Ward?
Do you think that it would be worth picking him up out of the draft?
See, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I haven't studied Cam Ward, and at the same time, I mean, if you tell me that Cam Ward has no tight end and no right tackle, I'm not going to feel very good about his success with the Titans.
Understandable. And on
Thank
the
you for your
subject
call.
of Chigakonkwo.
Okay, give me your Chig take.
Chigakonkwo, 20, is it 25 receptions this season? This last season?
I don't know.
Okay. He had 23 receptions with 192 yards.
Okay.
So Levis to Chig relation, is it a strong, so going into next season?
Okay, I'm going to cut you off here. Chig sucks. Okay? Chig is a backup. And I don't think Chig is a bad backup, but I don't think he's a great backup either. Chig is a backup. And, it's funny because with Treylon Burks, I understand. That is a bust. He is a first rounder. You traded A.J. Brown to get him. The guy is never healthy, and he stinks. That is just a swing and a miss bust. Chig was a fourth-round draft choice. Chig plays like a fourth-round tight end. If Chig's on a good team with a good tight end, and then he goes in there on a couple of plays a game, there's a specific role carved out for him, I actually think Chig fits in a team pretty nicely as a role player, as a kind of 3rd and 7 tight end. If he has to start a game, he can probably do it. But the last 2 years, the Tennessee Titans have said, Chig is our guy. And he just doesn't do anything. And every now and then, Chig makes a catch like the touchdown in Chicago, where he makes me think, man, look at the athleticism, and he could be this, and he could be. But he's not Jonnu Smith, or at least what Jonnu Smith was here. He's not that. And I think that's what they wanted him to be. He's not that. And again, some of it was Jonnu played on a team with A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Derrick Henry, and an offensive line. But he's not. Jonnu had like 8 touchdowns that last year where they lit it up. And that's not what Chig is. Chig's a backup. And I'm convinced Chig is a backup. Like right now, and I know Jonnu Smith was in New England and he didn't do a whole lot. Then he went to Atlanta last year and he didn't do a whole lot. But again, Kyle Pitts is on that team in Atlanta. So if you put Jonnu Smith on this team, I still think the Jonnu that's in Miami right now, I still think Jonnu might be the best tight end on this team. Because these tight ends are bad. Like, they're bad. I mean, what Austin Hooper gave you a couple years ago, I think is probably better than what you're getting now out of the tight ends. And again, Bowers. Oh, Bowers. If Rand Carthon really thought, and again, I know they wanted to get their tackle and they loved Latham and they got him, and Latham's fine. But if they really, really, really love, like if they really, if this was the most accurate draft board they'd ever seen, which Rand said, and if they had an inkling the Falcons were going with Penix, which they said, man, they really could have used that 7th, or used that, where did they pick? 7th? That 7th pick in front of Atlanta to get a quarterback needy team to give them the world and still pick Brock Bowers. Or still pick J.C. Latham. And then pick up extra picks in the future. And again, I know it's revisionist history or whatever, but boy, Mark Dominic, everything that Mark Dominic said about Bowers, he was right. Bowers is awesome. And remember, Mark Dominic was like, hey, if Bowers is there at 7, slam dunk. And I was like, what? He's like, yes, because Dominic knows ball. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Coming up next, one Titan said something yesterday that has just, the second I heard that he said it, before I heard him say it, and it pissed me off the second I heard it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
All right, let's bring in Gene's territory. Gene, this is a tough one for the defense. What do you think?
It is, Adam, and I think Arch is right, too. And, when Mike Brown takes off, he launches a little, but he makes really good shoulder contact to the chest. These plays are really hard to officiate, and I can tell you when he leaves his feet there and officials thinking it feels like a launch, and it's just so close, they throw. And I also agree with Adam. Like, on these plays, look, they're so close and fine-lined that you'd like to see him throw, and we see Darnold go in for the touchdown there, guys. You'd like to see the official throw and maybe replay come in and take them off of that foul after they've thrown it.
I love how Gene's like, yeah, replay could have come in, and it was it is a non-reviewable play. Yeah. Ian, you know as well as I do, if the referees come together and they start, quote-unquote, talking, and the head ref upstairs in the replay booth says, yo, he hit him in the chest, what do you think's going to happen?
I don't know. Both guys on the field called it a penalty.
Again, if the guy with the replay monitor in front of him calls down and says, again, not saying this is a reviewable play.
That's what I mean.
But
it's
the
not a
reviewable
reviewable play.
Together,
the
and the guy in the
people are going
booth
to come
says,
out.
I'm looking at it right now. He hit him right in the chest.
Is it a
what do you think's going to happen?
Is it a reviewable play?
It's not.
Okay, then call in the field stands.
But they haven't made the call yet. They throw the flags. They come together. They're talking. Guy in the earpiece tells them, hey, I'm watching the replay right now. That's why they come together. They don't come together to actually talk about it. They come together
as a stall tactic to wait for the man in the sky?
All the time.
Yeah, that's all. I thought it was like they come together. Hey, did you see it? Yep, I saw it. No. Oh, did you see it? Yep, I saw it. All right, let's do it.
Well, I think there's that, but they're also talking to the guy.
Right,
they
maybe.
got the microphones on there like they're in sync, where they doing all the dance moves while they got they got it. If he said, I'm telling you, dude, he hit him in the chest, but the ref said, well, I saw it, and the other guy said, I saw it, and he's like, I'm watching the replay right now. He hit him in the chest. Blakeman is going to come out and say, after discussion, there is no foul for unnecessary roughness. The defender did not launch and hit the guy in the chest.
That would have been nice.
That's what Gene's talking about.
Yeah, I would have liked to see that.
I think that play cost the Titans a game, and I thought the second Brownlee penalty, the first Brownlee penalty, I thought was legit. And I'll take your word for it on Isaiah Prince lining up poorly. But I thought that those two plays represented 13 points in the game, and you lost by 10. And I think you got screwed by the referees. And I hate when people say things like, well, we shouldn't complain about the referees. Why? They should do their jobs too. But what I really don't want to hear is Peter Skoronski lecture me after the game about how only crappy, but that's not the word he used. They bleeped out the word he used. Teams complain about the officials. Here's what Peter Skoronski, here's what he had to say after the game.
I think teams blame officiating, and there's so much that we have to correct from our standpoint and being better. And if you're a bad team, if you put the game in the hands of the officials and not just get on your stuff and execute, and we didn't do that, and we deserve to lose. So I don't really care about, what penalties were called or not. I think it's more about what we did wrong.
I only think that bad teams, complain about the officials and we got to do this and we got to shut up. The last person I want to hear from on this planet about something like that is Peter Skoronski. Like maybe if you could pass block, which he can't, maybe if you could pass block, then you wouldn't need the refs to call the game appropriately. But you can't. And you're a big part of that problem, buddy. And then I watched Jordan Addison take a pass from Sam Darnold and just sprint his way to the end zone. And I thought, that is what you draft in the first round, not some crappy guard. By the way, Addison was taking 12 picks after Skoronski. So I don't need to hear Peter Skoronski, the guy who, in my opinion, represents exactly what's wrong with this franchise over the last 2 years. The guy was overrated from the jump. He doesn't play a premium position. They invested heavily in him, and he's not even that good. And I don't need Peter Skoronski to lecture me about we can't put the game in the hands of the officials. Why don't you learn how to pass block? Why don't you learn how to why don't you learn how to play like the 11th overall pick? Indy drafted a guard high too. Every time we watch him, it's like, wow, look at Quentin Nelson get out there and murder somebody. We never do that when it comes to Skoronski. This guy's like a 4th rounder. And he's going to lecture us on what to say about the refs? Sit down and shut up and learn how to pass block. It's the last time I ever want to hear from Peter Skoronski. Again, the representation of what's wrong with this franchise. We drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick. Meanwhile, Jordan Addison is kicking you in the groin. And he was taken 12 picks later. When you knew you needed a receiver, but you took a guard. Unbelievable. Mo is up next. 615-737-1025. What's up, Mo?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention 2 things. I think Will Levis, the past 2 games, he has played very well, especially considering how he played at the beginning of the season. I think he's developing into a very fine young professional quarterback. There's things that he can still perfect, but I feel like he is taking the right steps forward. And one thing I do want to say to you, Mr. Jared, I hear, like, when I listen to your show, you bring up a lot of the past Titans, like John Robinson. Like, you just brought up Jonnu Smith. You bring up Mike Vrabel. Like, that stuff is in the past. Like, every time I listen to your show, you always bringing this up. Like, we need to let go of the past and focus on the future. Like, that is not coming back anymore. Like, Corey Davis, A.J. Brown, all of that, Derrick Henry, John Robinson, all those people from the past are not coming back, bro. Let it go. And you need to be a little bit more chill.
So
on
never
the
talk
players,
about any player that was on the team that represented a good draft pick or represented a starting caliber player at the position.
But the past doesn't matter no more. Like John Robinson, none of that matters. They're fired. They're gone. We're focused on the future now. And that's all I have to really say.
Okay, so I don't know what to say about that. Because, again, when I take Jonnu Smith, I'm using that as a representation of what somebody starting at tight end looks like and what you don't have right now. Like, that's what I'm talking about. You don't have a starting caliber tight end. And somebody will say to me, but Jared, Chig can start at tight end. Like all you bozos spent all summer telling me that Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, a.k.a.
PT,
that PT could start at right tackle. But I knew he couldn't because I know what a starting right tackle looks like. And again, that's why we use the past Titans. Whether it's John Runyon or David Stewart, or that is when the Titans had a right tackle who you did not have to worry about ever. Right now, there's nothing they can do at right tackle. There's nothing they can do. But I think what you're really getting at is not I don't want to hear about Mike Vrabel anymore. I think what you're getting at is I don't want you to put down the current guys by saying that, hey, when the Titans used to be good, this is what it looked like. Because there was a difference. Because this team used to be good. Because when the Minnesota Vikings used to come to town, they used to not take over the entire stadium. But if you want everybody to pack your stadium, let's make up reasons not to say that Chig sucks. And let's talk about how good Peter Skoronski is. You know, how dare you, Jared, talk about the fact that the Colts drafted a guard high and he's actually good? Give me a break. And let me say this too. When it comes to Malarkey or Robinson, guys I thought were unfairly fired. And I know Robinson was the reason that Malarkey got fired. But when I bring that up, it's because I'm talking about standards. You guys tell me you can't fire a coach after 1 year. Why not? We fired a coach who won around here. Don't bring up the past. Well, I mean, aren't these the standards? 615-737-1025 here on the program. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. The right tackle position. I'm not going to tell you the story. I will promise you that. But I heard Brian Callahan yesterday talk about the right tackle issue they have. And boy, do I have a response. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Titans Monday. Titans fall to the Vikings 23-13. And it's hard not to say that the right tackle problem with which they have was not only a big reason that they lost yesterday, but a big reason that this season has been a complete and total disaster. Now, I am going to spare you the right tackle story because so many people have heard it so many times. But let me just say this before you get mad at me for why I've always told it. The reason I've told it so many times, it's been almost 4 years. I mean, I really actually think that it's about 4 years-ish to the date that Floyd was last on with us. It was 2020. The Titans played the Ravens. We did the pregame show on a Sunday, and on Monday, Floyd called out sick, and we never saw him again. And so that was 4 years ago. And Ian, the right tackle story did not really become a thing until about 2 years ago when the Titans went into training camp with Radens and PT at right tackle. And they didn't bring back David Quessenberry as an RFA. They didn't go sign Morgan Moses.
PT's second year?
This would have been PT's first year.
His first, okay.
So that was when, again, Radens and PT, Radens' second year, that I looked out and saw little baby Aaron Brewer at left guard and nobody at right tackle. And I said, all I know is the old man said you got to have a right tackle. In fact, I remember when I was in the hospital this summer, because I went to the Bahamas and I got an infection on my leg, and my dad was like, you should go to the hospital. So we went to the hospital, and we're sitting there, and the doctor was like, are we going to be any good, Jared? And my dad was like, yeah. And I said, guys, I looked at my dad. I said, Dad, you know the right tackle story. You know what Floyd meant by it, and you know that he said it, and you know what he meant. My dad was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm here to tell you, these guys they have right now, they can't play right tackle. And so yesterday after the game, Brian Callahan, after about the sixth game that they've lost, in which right tackle was a glaring, humongous problem, after the game he was asked about, hey, is there any way, is this just going to be a problem all year? Here's what he said.
How long has the uncertainty of right tackle been, the fact that you haven't been able to get anything settled there? And is there really an answer at this point?
Yeah, it's been really challenging. It makes it hard for us to operate sometimes. That's a position that's by far the weakest link up front right now. And, we're trying every which way we can to see if we can solve it. And thus far haven't been able to. And, we help over there a bunch, try to run the ball. We try to do a lot of things that keep them out of harm's way. But every now and again, you have to drop back and pass, and you can't help every edge, and you need guys out in the pattern. And we've struggled in those spots sometimes, particularly, the 2-minute drill at the end of the half. So yeah, it's a position that we're trying our damnedest to figure out and help us. And right now it's not quite been good enough.
He's sitting there telling you, oh yeah, it's been tough. It's been the weak link on the offensive line. We've tried things out. We tried to run the ball. We've rotated guys in there. It's something we're working hard to figure out. And it's just been the damnedest thing. And let me tell you something right now. I have no sympathy for him. And I have no sympathy for Ran Carthon. And I have no sympathy for Chad Brinker when it comes to the unmitigated disaster that is the right tackle position of the Tennessee Titans. They screwed up. Don't put this on Bill Callahan. Bill Callahan is not the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. He is not the general manager. He has no final say over anything. This is not Bill Callahan's fault. This is Brian Callahan, Ran Carthon, and Chad Brinker. And there is no other explanation than they screwed up. Not, well, they thought no, they screwed up. They should have known better. And this is one thing that I will say that highlights why I believe these guys don't know what they're doing. Because again, Brian Callahan, can sit here yesterday and say, it's been a problem all year, and we've tried to run the ball, and we've tried to protect, and we've tried to help out the tackles, and we've rotated all these guys through, but sometimes at the end of the day, we have to pass block, and the right tackles can't do it. Hell, the right tackles can't even get lined up. They wiped a huge touchdown off the board on Sunday. And it's because Brian Callahan thought he had all the answers. Rand Carthon thought he had all the answers, as if he didn't sit through the same bullcrap last year. And they blew it. And let me just say this. I did my part. I told the coach the right tackle story. Every press conference I went to, how many questions did I ask about the right tackle position? How many topics did we have during the summer?
Too many.
Remember when PT couldn't get on the field at OTAs? Oh, Jared, it's just OTAs. I'm like, you can't rely on this guy. In fact, let's go back to June. Let's go back to OTAs. When they kept saying, hey, we think PT and Duncan can do it. And you can hear in my question, like, are you sure? The right tackle position, you guys didn't add right tackle. What was it that you saw in the tape of Nick and Jalen that made you feel comfortable about not adding another tackle with Jalen?
Yeah, I see young players that are ascending. I see young players that had a lot of room for improvement from last year. But I see guys that have traits and talent to be able to make a jump and make a transition and play good football. We're going to find our best five, however that looks, come September. But those two guys for sure have the ability and have the physical talent and traits to be able to be starting right tackles or tackles in this league. It was good to see them play some, because when you get to see guys play, you get to know where their weaknesses are and how to correct them. And I think that part has been fun to see those guys get better every day fundamentally.
Is there an insurance policy or insurance option if you put the pads on and they're not in training camp where you want them to be?
There's always options. Sometimes your options that are outside of your building are better than others, but there's also a whole nother set of acquisition period that comes at the end of training camp. There's trades that occur, there's cuts that occur. There's still potential to add at the position if you feel like you need to. Again, maybe not be the options that you would want. There may not be one that's available that's worth it. But there's always avenues to improve still before the season starts if you feel like you need a spot somewhere on the roster.
In June, they had all the answers. PT and Duncan were, I see young ascending players. Oh my God. And again, it's not like I'm second guessing. It's not like I was on the bandwagon with everybody else thinking PT could do it. I asked, I said, so you got an insurance policy? Like, you got something there that, let's use Chris Hubbard as the example. You got a Chris Hubbard, a David Quessenberry on the roster just in case. These guys suck. You got it. Do you have an insurance policy? Well, we can always add guys. There'll be cut downs and there'll be trades and there'll be, and that's how you end up with Isaiah Prince, who can't even get lined up. They blew it. And again, it goes back to the fact that they didn't know what they were doing. And that's why I have no sympathy for them. Again, I don't know, again, this whole fatherhood thing and what it's going to be and I have no idea. But if my son's 15 years old and I tell him 6 times not to do something, and then he goes out there and does it, and he has to deal with the consequences, I'm not going to feel sorry for him. This is the NFL. When you get hired as a coach, it's not, well, I'm going to take over the team, but everybody be patient with me because I don't really know what I'm doing. No. It's, I've got an idea for this team because I think I've been through this enough and I think I'm ready. And Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker don't even have the excuse that they're new to their jobs because they're not. They didn't have a right tackle last year. How'd that work out for them? So I'm sorry. When it comes to the Titans, and don't feel bad for their right tackle issues, they had a draft and they didn't take one. They had a free agency period and they didn't sign one. They had a free agent period last year. The top right tackle on the market last year wanted to come to the Titans, and they didn't want him because they thought PT could do it, and then they ran it back. So I do not feel sorry for them. Do not listen to, well, we've tried everything, and well, we're trying to protect, and well, we're trying to run the ball, and well, we're trying this. No. You blew it. All three of you should have known better, and you didn't. And now you're paying the consequences for that, and it might cost all three of you your jobs. And if I own the team, it probably would. And the one thing that I truly believe, I don't know how this is going to work out for Brian Callahan. Maybe he's a one-and-done coach. Maybe he ends up being, they take the training wheels off after this year, and he learns his lessons, and he becomes a great coach. He's the next Bill Belichick. I don't know. But 30 years from now, I doubt Brian Callahan will be a head coach. He'll be about 60, 70 years old. And I wonder if 30 years from now or 3 years from now, when Brian Callahan's coaching career is over and he's hosting talk radio, if some know-it-all GM or coach will put together a team without a right tackle and he'll laugh. Because I can promise you, Brian Callahan will never go into a season without a right tackle ever again. Brian Callahan will never think, I can coach this guy who sucks. I heard Nick Saban say on the Pat McAfee show on Friday, he said, I've never coached bad players to be good. I've only coached good players to be better. And they thought they could coach bad players to be good. And they should have known better. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. And somebody texted into the text line. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com and said, if the right tackle position is not Bill Callahan's fault, then why are the special teams problems Colt Anderson's fault? And I'm going to explain to you why the right tackle problem is not Bill Callahan's fault. Even though I'm sure Bill Callahan was a part of the discussion when they decided that they didn't need a right tackle. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
You and your offensive line coach certainly had input into what's on the roster there.
Sure.
But you also had a general manager who knew what was left over on the roster there.
Yeah.
Did he serve you well enough in terms of advice as to
Yeah,
what was
absolutely. Yeah, I think so. I mean, we thought we had, I thought Nick was going to play pretty well for us. That hasn't been the case this year. He's not had the type of season I think he would probably tell you. He hasn't had that kind of performance yet. And it's just you can't just find everybody all the time. I mean, we had things we got to get better at, and right now the right tackle spot is one that we're not there yet. And we're trying everything. We're trying every answer. We're bringing guys in. We're doing all the things that you do to try to help fix it. But right now it hasn't paid off yet. So other than that, that's what it is. I think our communication with the front office has been great. We know what our issues are and how we need to address them.
Brian Callahan there asked about, hey, what about your daddy? Because everybody thought, hey, he's the evaluator. And what about Rand Carthon? And Paul would never, ever, ever, ever ask about his buddy Chad Brinker, because the second Paul mentions Chad Brinker in a negative light is the second that Chad Brinker stops returning text messages to Paul. So, again, he's saying, what about Bill Callahan and what about Rand Carthon? This is an argument I got into with Derek yesterday on the pregame show. Because to me, the right tackle problem, and Ian, I'm going to say this, I think the right tackle problem is such an issue with the team. Do they have deficiencies in other places? Absolutely. They have deficiencies in other places. But I think it's so bad, and Floyd was so right. Right tackles probably cost them what? 2 games, 3 games? If they had a good right tackle, would they be 2 or 3 games better?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, I'd argue they would have won yesterday, or at least they would have had some kind of a shot at winning yesterday.
Yeah, maybe at least get rid of some of those illegal formation penalties, which really shouldn't matter who's at right tackle at that point. You can if you can get lined up right, at least, my goodness.
Which again takes me back to the blame. To me, this falls solely on the shoulders of Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, and not Bill Callahan. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the issue with Nicholas Petit Frere, a.k.a.
PT,
the problem with PT has never been that PT doesn't have talent. PT's always had talent. Gentry Estes told me a couple years ago, because Gentry used to cover college football in Alabama. And Gentry said PT had offers from Alabama, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. He was the top recruit in the country on the offensive line, and he went to Ohio State and he started at left tackle. And when you read his draft profile, I want to say it was NFL.com, or it was one of these websites, PFF, one of these websites that said, when you watch his tape against Scarbini State, he looks like a first rounder. When you watch him against Aiden Hutchinson, he looks like he should be undrafted. PT's got no heart. I heard Derek talking about that today. Derek was saying he doesn't even think PT cares, which again, I don't know him. He's probably right. But again, I don't know PT, so you'll just have to take it with a grain of salt. Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker knew PT because they were here last year. They knew he was unreliable because they had him pinned in as the starter at right tackle when all of a sudden he had this concocted gambling suspension that nobody else except Jamison Williams in the NFL had to deal with. They had to scramble last minute last year to sign Chris Hubbard to play right tackle because they put their eggs in PT's basket. Bill Callahan probably watched the tape and said, yeah, I see some really good things. And I could probably sit down with him and probably say, hey, let's move our hands over here and let's move our butt over there and let's, put our left arm in, take our left arm out, put your left arm in and shake it all about. But he didn't know PT. That's the difference. Yesterday on the pregame show, Derek was talking about, well, they probably just deferred to Bill Callahan. And that's great. Except that Bill Callahan doesn't know PT, or at least he didn't going into the year. He's trying to learn these guys, but he doesn't know them. He wasn't coaching them. He wasn't around them in the building. He didn't see them in the lunchroom. He didn't walk by when they're going to take a piss in the restroom. They did. And so if Bill Callahan said, yeah, I think there's something we can work with, and they took that to the bank, that's on them. Because I knew PT was unreliable. Hell, I'm sitting there asking questions in June about insurance policies if it doesn't work out, because I knew you couldn't rely on PT. But they didn't. And then I look at the team you played yesterday, the Vikings. And I think the Vikings are the exact opposite of you. Because the Vikings have an insurance policy for everything. The Titans just draft a player and say, okay, that's our guard. Okay, that's our DT. That's our replacement for Danico Autry, a 360-pounder who never sacked a quarterback in college. You're in for Danico. That's not what the Vikings do. The Vikings drafted J.J. McCarthy in the first round. Maybe they would have been able to take him. Maybe they wouldn't have been able to take him. They didn't know. Did they have an insurance policy at quarterback? They took Dallas Turner with their other first-round draft pick. Everybody hit the quarterback yesterday. Did you notice him? No. But they had insurance options. Jonathan Grenard was one of their big free agent signings. Andrew Van Ginkel from the Dolphins had 6 sacks last year. Again, insurance. And that's how Minnesota can lose their first-round draft choice, quarterback out for the year, and they're okay because they protected themselves. The Titans put all their eggs in PT's basket. And if they did because Bill Callahan watched some tape and said, you know what, I think I can coach him, that tells you how little they actually know about football. That's the problem. Again, they had to know he was unreliable. He got suspended last year. He played in 3 games. He was awful. He got hurt and was out for the year. He wasn't even that good as a rookie. Joe today is trying to make the case because Joe was a big believer that Bill Callahan will fix it. And Joe was trying to make the case today. He was trying to say, well, I mean, his rookie year, PT was very good. He said, by any metric, it wasn't as bad, to which I texted Joe. Let me make sure I get this right, Ian, because this was probably an all-time
Well, he
favorite
has
today.
regressed, it feels like.
Well, I just think that because Dennis Daly's not on this team anymore, it's not as glaring. I always thought PT was awful. But Joe said by any metric, he's like, I don't even like PFF, but you can look up PFF. He wasn't this bad. PT's grade as a rookie was 52.3. His grade is 51.9 now. So he's basically the same, according to the PFF grades. I'm sure he sucks more, but he was terrible as a rookie too. I mean, I gave him the benefit of the doubt after his rookie year because I was like, well, he's a rookie, so, now he knows what the NFL's like. And then the gambling suspension, and he was terrible last year. He's crying on the bench at Pittsburgh. I was like, okay. I mean, I'm not putting my eggs in this guy's basket. But they did. They had no insurance if PT didn't pan out. Just like they have no insurance if Tavondre Sweat couldn't replace Danico Autry sacks. No insurance, period. And to me, that is unacceptable roster construction. Is Bill Callahan the GM? Is Bill Callahan the head coach? Do they pay Bill Callahan like he's the GM? Do they pay Bill Callahan like he's the head coach? Does he have an office like the GM, an office like the head coach? Does he get 8 tickets to the game like the GM, 8 tickets to the game like the coach? Does he get a box for the Taylor Swift concert that probably shouldn't scalp? No. So don't put this on Bill Callahan because he watched some tape and said, oh, I think he can. No. This is on management. They should have known better, and they didn't. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on this. Plus, there is one thing I do feel a little bad about. Maybe even a little responsible. I feel guilty would be the right word. We'll touch on that coming up. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
3rd and 6, another flag thrown. Levis taking a shot. He's got Ridley, and he's in for the Tennessee touchdown. We'll check the flag here. It was thrown right around the line of scrimmage. It's a 51-yard strike if it stands.
Illegal formation. Offense, number 68 was not on line. 5-yard penalty. We play 3rd down.
Mr. Archuleta?
Well, I believe they got Isaiah Prince for being too far back and getting too much of a cushion. You know, it's hard to say really from that angle. You see Radens, he's back pretty far as well. But it's one of those days. I don't really know in so many critical key moments, big plays, game swing type plays, if I've seen that many critical penalties that have hurt a football team.
I mean, look, if you can't get lined up, I don't know what to say. And I'll take their word for it that Isaiah Prince was lined up, but talk about just an unmitigated disaster. The Titans, they try out practice squad Scarbini after practice squad Scarbini, and none of them are any good. They put this guy in there because they hope he might be better than PT, and he takes a 60-yard touchdown off the board. Unbelievable. So I got one text, and then we get back to your phones. This one texter says, Jared, what if Ran Carthon didn't know PT? Because perhaps that's the disconnect between Vrabel and Ran. And I got to say this. This turned in from last year when it was like, who's in charge? Nobody knows because they didn't say anything. To now, people are saying like they're pretending like Ran wasn't even in Nashville last year. Well, what if he didn't know PT? Well, then he should be fired because he's the general manager and he should know all the players on his own team. Remember, they did check every box from the top starter to the furthest backup. Let's go to your phones. Adam in Portland is up next here on the program. Adam, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Jeff Fisher never put a trashy offensive line on the field. I'll tell you that. And who
drafted Jeff Fisher's tackles?
Jeff Fisher. Well, it don't matter who drafted. I know who drafted. I love him too, man. But at the same time, I'm still mad that you're bagging on him the way you were the other day. I'm not just going to lay down on that. It is what it is. Everybody's got an opinion about it.
I think Jeff Fisher had some pretty crappy offensive lines with the Rams. He drafted Greg Robinson number 2 overall.
I don't care about the Rams, Jared, not one bit. All right, so my problem with yesterday, we did get cheated. It ended the way it was supposed to, which means you're supposed to lose the game. It's like on the Green Mile when he doesn't wet the sponge. It still happened the way it was supposed to happen. My problem is that we shanked a punt, and then we gave up a big return as soon as we did something positive. That is not going away. And I don't know if you've already addressed it. I jumped in late, but I feel like special teams, at some point, you got to – I almost end season at this point. It's never going to get better. Like, we had momentum yesterday. We looked like a pretty decent team with a bad offensive line for the most of the game, but special teams is still such a hindrance, dude. Like, I would like to see them address that.
So I think special teams stinks too, but of all the games in which special teams was an issue, thank you, Adam, in all the games that special teams was an issue, I don't think that was the one. I'm going to be completely frank. I don't think that was the game where I'm like, oh, special teams. You know, I thought that I thought James Williams hit the guy out of bounds in live time. Like, I criticized the referees because I thought Mike Brown's hit was a real hit when I saw it and whatever. I thought that James Williams hit the guy out of bounds. They called a horse collar, and he wasn't even really close to a horse collar. But then you got the 15 yards back on the Jaquan Jackson return where Jaquan Jackson's feet were still in the field of play, and they called a personal foul for hitting the guy out of bounds when really, just like Mike Brown's penalty, the problem was guy hit him too hard. That I don't have a problem with. Special teams yesterday, that wasn't my issue. I still think you should fire the coach. And I thought he looked like a bozo when Callahan was getting into it with the officials. Kayla Anderson posted a video on Twitter. Callahan's out by the 20-yard line. He's got one of his strength coaches doing a real half-assed job at trying to kind of hold him back a little bit. It's almost like the strength coach was afraid to actually do it. But then here comes Colt Anderson marching up there and stands right there and says nothing. Like he was going to do something about it. Like, go back. Go back to third base. Field your position. Let's go to Lorenzo, who's up next here on the program. Lorenzo, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared. Hey, man. Hey, listen, on your calls about the games, man, you really hate Rand Carthon. You really do. And
I hate the fact that this team sucks.
You do. Yeah, but you do. Like, when we look at Rand, when you talk about the right tackle with Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, he didn't go into the season starting at right tackle. We had Dylan Radins at right tackle. Then
no, you didn't.
Sadiq Charles retires.
Lorenzo, that is factually not what happened.
That is what happened.
No, it is not.
Dylan Radins had to move over.
Lorenzo, were you at practice every day?
No, I've seen enough.
I was.
Had to play.
I am telling you right now. Dylan Radins was not playing right tackle in training camp.
Okay, but
what did you say about Autry?
Right tackle was Dylan Radins.
No, it was not, Lorenzo. You're just wrong about this. Like, I understand the idea. There's a lot of people out there that want, Lorenzo, thank you. There's a lot of people out there that want to say, Jared just hates Rand Carthon. As if the fact that the team is the worst in the league and it's taken over by visiting fans of a fan base that isn't even a popular NFL fan base is not reason why I'm upset. Like, oh, Jared hates Rand Carthon, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he's responsible for what the problem at right tackle is. Like, that those two things are completely unrelated, and it's ridiculous. And if you're going to argue it, don't argue it by saying Dylan Radins was the right tackle, and because that's not what happened. Here's what happened. They signed Sadiq Charles in the offseason. All of us looked at each other and said, who the hell is that? Well, he's going to compete for guard. Okay. Then we asked Brian Callahan, what's the deal with Radins? Is he the right tackle? Is he a guard? Callahan said, he's a guard. What about right tackle? He said PT and Duncan. And then they put John Ojukwu in there because PT couldn't get his fat ass on the field. Remember, he was out of OTAs and he was out of training camp. And I kept saying, this is your right tackle? He can't even get on the field? Seriously? Like he can't even get into games? Like can't even practice? And it was like, yeah. But never once was Dylan Radins an option. I mean, I think the Titans, this is where I get upset. Because I really believe that the Titans, if they had to default, because I watched it last year at the end of the year with Radins at right tackle and Brunskill at right guard. At some point, they should have tried it. Because what it was on the right side last year was better than what it is now. But then after that, Brunskill played right tackle in San Francisco. They've never tried it. So they're like, we've tried everything. And it's like, well, you didn't do what you did last year. But don't come at me and say Dylan Radins was the right tackle. And if that's the case, and it's all Sadiq Charles' fault, which, again, let's not bring up who brought Sadiq Charles in for Sadiq Charles to stink, throw up on the first day of practice, and quit 2 weeks into it. But let's ignore that. If it was Sadiq Charles, why would you move your starting right tackle to right guard? You don't move good tackles to guard. You move bad tackles to guard because guard is not as important as tackle. Goodness gracious. Like, you're going to try to come at me with that? You think I don't know verbatim who the tackle was every single day of training camp this year that I was at, and I was at pretty much every practice until after the Seahawk game? You don't think I knew who the right tackle was? Of all the things that I obsessed about this entire offseason, you think I don't know who you think you know who right tackle was more than I do? Give me a break. The Rand Club. Again, it could never be the fact that Rand's a terrible general manager, drafted a guard in the first round last year, drafts a defensive tackle. They drafted a defensive tackle in the second round this year that everybody said as soon as they drafted him, ooh, that's too high for him. And it's no, you'll see. And yesterday, Joe Rexrode wants to throw a parade because T'Vondre Sweat almost sacked the quarterback. Unbelievable. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Stillman and Company. We'll get to more of your phones, but there is one thing that I do feel a little bad about. I'm sure we'll touch on this today. Stillman and Company, 1025 again.
You failed this fan base and you failed the organization by not going out and truly addressing that spot. Like, truly. Don't give me, Nicholas was there and he was young and he showed some stuff early. The kid can't play. And he can't play because he doesn't have it in him. If he had it in him, you would see better play. But I don't think he cares. I really don't think he cares at this point. Don't put him back in. He shouldn't be back on the field. Find somebody else. Because what he's giving you is nothing, zero, zilch, nada. He's giving you nothing. When he walks out, there's a joke. Those linemen on the other side are looking at, they're just like, please put him back out here. Please, I beg of you. Throw Nicholas back out there so we can work him some more. And don't tell me, just leave the other guy out there. At least just leave the other guy. Leave Leroy Watson out there or somebody else. Do not put Nicholas back in the game.
Was that Derek Mason, the president of the Rand Club? Ian, we need to save that one. That one I loved. Derek going off on PT.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Hey, yeah, must be Ohio State Big Ten connection there. Not happy with that.
Must be. Let's go to your phones as promised. Lincoln in the Borough is up next here on Stillman & Company and our Titans Monday. What's up, Lincoln?
Hey, Jared. Man, I feel like every single week, it's like Groundhog Day, like that movie, because I feel like every single week it's the same issues over and over against this team. We have no special
But at least
teams.
they played better yesterday, right?
Not
I was
really.
pleased with yesterday.
You know, but it's still a loss, so who cares? But we still don't have a right tackle. We still don't have special teams. And you can take all the moral victories you want or whatever. But at the end of the day, this roster is still bad. And it's not like you can't go out and get people. Do you remember in 2021 when we had the most injured team in the NFL and we ended the season first place in our division? Like
But you lost to bad teams when AJ Brown got hurt. Like that is the one thing that like you can replace, a injured guard for a couple of games, but you can't replace AJ Brown. And that's the problem. You don't have any of those players on this team.
Right.
So, I mean, I hear you're complaining. Thank you for your call. And I'm not dismissing it because, again, like, we want to win. We don't want to almost win. But I am in the because I've already given up on the season, because this team is so wretchedly awful, because this team didn't win yesterday, thus they didn't mess up the draft pick. I'm okay with losing. And I thought the quarterback progressed, and I think that's a good thing. I think the coach showed some marbles, and I think that's a good thing, getting up in the ref's face. So, again, I'm okay with moral victories. Now, when I used to have when I was allowed to have expectations for the Titans, I didn't believe in moral victories. But now, Let Rand Cook has turned into, they get a moral victory there. One texter says, let Rand cook. How can he cook if he hasn't already burned the kitchen down? Until the Titans bring in someone to fix in the kitchen, there will be no cooking in the Titans' kitchen. Okay, that's enough for me. If Rand is still around when it gets fixed, what makes people think he won't burn it down? Again, the best organizations keep bad front offices around. Bad organizations keep bad front offices around for too long, and the Titans have. I mean, again, you know how I feel about the front office. Text says, how can D. May say this about PT, but then believe everything wasn't their fault? So I got into this with Derek yesterday in the pregame show. When I kept saying, I was like, Derek, how did they not know? He's like, well, but Bill Callahan told him. I'm like, but Bill Callahan didn't know PT. He didn't coach them last year. They were here, I think, right? They earned paychecks. They had titles. They may have just sat in their offices listening to podcasts all day, but they were here, and so they should be held responsible for that. So I do think that is a problem. And again, I'm not saying that. I look at Jermaine Illuminor. That's who I would have signed. Jermaine Illuminor has also played guard. So you could kick Illuminor into guard if it worked out with PT. The problem is that there was no insurance policy, period. There wasn't even a Chris Hubbard. And you could have signed Chris Hubbard after training camp. But remember, the Titans told Corey Curtis they felt good about right tackle. So, again, just that's reality. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, speaking of reality, boy, there was a reality that was staring Amy Adams Strunk in the face yesterday, and it was purple. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. I hope there is somebody listening right now who is saying to themselves, wait a minute, they said jelly roll tickets in the 4 o'clock hour because you got your opportunity to win them now. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you will see the man, the myth, the legend, Jelly Roll at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, November 26th. Contest is supplied by Chiba Hut Subs, serving up dank food and chill vibes, now open in Donaldson. And let me say this, I have been to the Jelly Roll concert. I went in Louisville. My girlfriend is part of the Jelly Roll's record label team. They're a great record label, by the way, Broken Bow Records. We were at the Jelly Roll concert in Louisville. It is worth admission. So good luck. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios on a Titans Monday. And I got to say, I am happy with the Titans' performance on Sunday, all things considered. Probably because in retrospect, they have set the bar so low that I can sit here and tell you that I am happy with losing a game for the draft status. I'm happy where a couple of bad calls decided the outcome. I'm happy that, and again, you didn't lose it. The ref screwed you. I'm happy the young quarterback didn't blow it. And I'm happy with him and the coach because they both showed some nuts. Did they win? No. But again, we want the draft pick, and that's how low the bow is, how low the bar is. That's it. Yesterday was a bad look for the Titans, considering how many Viking fans took over that stadium. And I have to say this. It was the Vikings. We saw it from across the river during the award-winning pregame show. We're sitting there at JBJ's, all Viking fans. We look over to the bar next to us, all Viking fans on the rooftop. Bar, rooftop, Vikings, Vikings, Vikings. I didn't hear the midday show today if they talked about this, if Derek said that. But during the breaks, we'd look on Broadway. It was like The Sims, and it was just all purple shirts. Then the walking bridge, all purple. Quite frankly, I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like it. Ian and I were talking about during the break. Maybe the Patriots in 2018, but I still think there were a lot of Titan fans like me who went to that game, and I was rooting for the Titans. And it's like, hey, yeah, we know the Patriots are popular, but hey, we've got a shot to beat Tom Brady. But again, it's the Vikings. We saw it across the river during the pregame show. I said to somebody, I go, that kind of crowd gets a coach fired. Like, that's the kind of crowd that the owner sees in her box that gets a coach fired. In this case, I'm really more talking about the general manager than I am the coach. But it's like how I told Caroline when A.J. Brown spanked the goalpost. I said, hey, that's kind of game gets a coach fired. I was thinking more like a defensive coordinator, but she fired the general manager. That kind of crowd gets a coach fired. And after all, again, I keep saying this because it's true. It was the Vikings. It wasn't the Cowboys. It wasn't the Steelers. The Vikings are a tier 3 fan base. They're not in the elite fan bases, the most popular teams, the Steelers, Cowboys, Packers, 49ers. They're not one of those kind of teams. The Raiders, they're not one of those teams. And they're not a new money dynasty. They're not the Chiefs, where it's like, well, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. Same way the Patriots used to have it. It's the Vikings. And again, they're a proud fan base. You know, I would not say, worst fans in the NFL. I wouldn't say that. They're not Jacksonville. They're not Carolina. But again, they're not the Chicago Bears. And yet, they crushed Nissan Stadium. They owned Nissan Stadium. And I think if you're Amy Adams-Strunk, because some people will say, well, what's it matter to her? Because those Viking fans in purple are buying her beer and buying her popcorn and whatever. Number one, nobody that owns a team likes to see that. Nobody. Nobody that owns a team likes to sit up in their box That's first thing. The second thing is this. That is the sign from the fans. The fans that have season tickets like me. I didn't go to the game yesterday. I got no interest. It feels like an all-day thing to go to a Titans game. Now, again, I host a pregame show, so I got to park my car and then go over and do the pregame show and then walk across the bridge. And now because they got rid of the parking lots, got to walk back. And it's like I'm home at 4:30. I leave the house at 8, and it's like, that's too much for me to watch this bull crap. To watch a team that, again, was smarter than everybody and didn't get a right tackle. But I think there are a lot of fans that were like me, that yesterday, instead of going to the game, thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to sell these tickets. I'm not wasting my Sunday. I'll watch it on TV, but I'm not wasting my Sunday with all of the ancillary pricing, expenses, and extracurricular bullcrap to go watch that. And what do you get when that happens? You get a middle finger from your fans to the owner saying, we've had enough. And I'm convinced that's what yesterday was. This is an organization that spent an entire offseason, and I don't know if it was begging the same people to spend $35,000 for PSLs or not, but they spent an entire offseason gaslighting their fans, either because the people that run their football team are too stupid to look at the roster construction, or because there was a directive from above saying we want to sell PSLs and we want to get fans excited, so let's make up a bunch of things that aren't true. Go do your podcast interviews. Tell everyone we're going to be great. And it has been a cataclysmic disaster. Add on the fact that they fired an incredibly popular coach. And this is what you get. You get a fan base that will not show up to your stadium. I mean, my guess is, and I don't know the exact numbers, but the Titans have probably sold 75% of every ticket before the draft through corporate sponsorships and PSLs, season tickets, etc. That 25% of their tickets are probably people that bought tickets for the Vikings game. But then there are people like me who have tickets that I'm not going. I am not wasting. It's not like I'm protesting the Titans. It's not like I'm saying, well, I want to show them. But it's more so, it's kind of a pain in the ass to go to the game. So when I go to the game, I want to go to the game to watch a team that I feel like supporting. And maybe the Titans have taken their own fans for granted. Maybe they haven't. I don't know. But again, the fans aren't going to protest the team. They're not going to get a bunch of picket signs and go outside St. Thomas Sports Park and demand that the owner change. And they're just not going to show up. They're just going to sell their tickets to Viking fans. And Amy Adams-Strunk has to go down on that field. Amy Adams-Strunk has to spend time with the other team's owners. You think she enjoys talking to the Vikings owner before the game and seeing nothing but Viking fans in her stadium? Again, she's probably talking to the Vikings owner on the field, the Wilfs, and the fans are probably, Mr. Wilf, Mr. Wilf. They're not yelling Amy. So that kind of crowd, I've never seen that for a tier 3 fan base before. And I've seen Cleveland travels well. And, I actually take that back. I've seen it one time where a team, again, a tier 3 fan base, traveled like that. And again, it's company you don't want to be in. We'll get to that next on your phone. 615-737-1025. I'm just going to say this. If you're trying to sell PSLs, the last thing you want your owner to see is an entire stadium full of the other fans. Because those are her PSL holders that are saying, screw this. Bud Adams decided not to go back to Memphis because there were so many Pittsburgh Steelers fans at the game. And that's a tier 1 fan base. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
as stadium takeovers go, PK, how did that one rate yesterday by the opposing team's fans?
I mean, there's obviously recency bias at play, but I think it's number one. I put it at maybe 60, 65%. I'm bad at estimating things. Some people are saying 70%. It's only the second time I really remember like a real audible collective cheers. Green Bay did it earlier this year, and this was bigger than Green Bay. And the more I'm thinking about it, the more comfortable I am with a 70%. And Joe, I mean, it was walking in, it was apparent that it was going to be something special because I saw, I probably saw 7 Vikings fans for out of every 10 and in full regalia.
That was PK. And again, PK's covered probably every single home game the Titans have ever had. And it was all, and even he's like, this is the most I've ever seen it. And again, it was the Vikings. I keep saying the Vikings are a tier 3 fan base. That is no disrespect to the Vikings. But I decided to rank them, Ian. I decided to rank
I saw going through here.
I decided to rank them, by tiers as far as where these fan bases sit. Because if that had been the Dallas Cowboys, would you have been surprised? Now, the Cowboys stink.
Right, if they were good.
Right. Like, it's the Cowboys.
Sure. Yeah.
If it had been the Packers or
the Steelers,
remember when the Chicago Bears drank up all of Broadway?
I do remember that, actually. Yeah, they ran out of beer.
Right. Would you have been surprised? But the Vikings?
Vikings.
So here you go.
Solid fan base. You might be underestimating that.
Again, tier 3. Tier 3 is good. You're not the Chargers or the Falcons, but they're not a top fan base. How many Tom Brady, Kevin Burkhardt, Jim Nantz, or Tony Romo games have they gotten this year? Have they gotten one this season?
I don't know that.
I'm going to guess no, because I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Maybe the Packers game? No, I don't think Brady did that game, though. I'm not sure.
I mean, I wish there was like a website. So week 1, they got Kenny Albert and Jonathan Vilma. We know they stink.
Yeah, we had them
week
last
2,
week.
Kevin Harlan and Trent Green. Let's go to week 3. Again, this is going to get boring going through all the weeks. So let's just do the first month of the year. Week 3, Iron Eagle, Charles Davis, not bad.
Well, early on, they weren't sure how they were going to be because of Sammy D as the quarterback. It wasn't until they started to win some games that people might have, gotten the bigger schedule.
Green Bay, Kevin Harlan, Trent Green. Again, if you're a tier 1 team, you get Tony Romo no matter what because you're a tier 1 fan base. So here you go. Here's tier 1. Dallas, Pittsburgh, Green Bay, Philly, San Francisco, the Raiders, Chicago, and Kansas City. And the Raiders, just because, again, I mean, they are, the Raiders could play anywhere and they'd pack it. But really, everybody on that group packs it anywhere they go. And KC is temporary. Like how New England used to be a tier 1 fan base with Brady. KC's temporary, but right now they pack it like a tier 1 fan base. And so no harm in a tier 1 team packing your stadium. Tier 2, Buffalo, Denver, the Giants, Cleveland, and New England. New England still has enough bandwagoners from the Brady era. Cleveland, it's shocking how blue their blood is for Cleveland Brown football. And Floyd had to wear a bulletproof vest on the sidelines one time because Jerry Glanville ate a dog biscuit on TV. Buffalo, they jump on tables. And Denver, I was stunned one time on the walking bridge after a Denver game how many Denver fans there were. Tier 3, Lions, Seahawks, Ravens, Saints, Dolphins, Jets, Vikings, Commanders. Good fan bases. But again, not the Steelers. Tier 4, Bengals, Titans, Rams, Colts, Bucks. Tier 5, Falcons, Texans, Jags, Cardinals, Chargers, Panthers. That's my ranking. A tier 3 fan base just took over your stadium. A tier 3 fan base that gets Kenny Albert and Kevin Harlan every week. No disrespect to them. And yet they packed your stadium. And it reminded me of one game. I said, I've never seen something like that. And I'm like, well, hold on. In 2015, the second Wisenhunt year. And remember, in 2014, I was on the radio in Louisville, so I only went to a couple of games. So I can't give you a game-by-game breakdown of that. But in 2015, The Titans played Miami, and Miami had already fired their head coach, Joe Philbin. They had an interim head coach, Dan Campbell. Ryan Tannehill was the starting quarterback, and they came in here and they smoked the Titans. But what I remember from that game is I remember looking, because I sit in the club level, and I looked down and I saw Dolphin aqua everywhere. And I thought, these are the Dolphins. Again, not the Steelers, not the Cowboys, not the 49ers. The Dolphins are packing your stadium. And again, what was it? To me, it was the fan protest of, screw this, I'm not watching Kim Winston-Hunt football. And right now, that's what you have. And what do you have in common with the 2015 Titans? They don't have a right tackle. So it is what it is. Like, I'm sorry. As far as the Vikings are concerned, that's a tier 3 fan base. Again, a proud fan base, just like the Lions are a proud fan base. But you're not Dallas. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com at 615-737-1025. One texter says there were so many Vikings fans because Nashville is considered such a great city to visit. Again, it's not like Nashville just got discovered by Christopher Columbus or something like that. Nashville's been a popular city for a long time. It wasn't like this the last time the Vikings came here. And I believe the last time the Vikings came here was 2016. Sean Hill started the quarterback for them because Teddy Bridgewater blew up his knee. It wasn't like this in 2016. Nashville was popular in 2016. One texter says a lot of Tennesseans were Viking fans before the Oilers came to town. I bet you a lot more were Steeler fans and Cowboy fans before they came to town. One texter says, you are crazy. The Bills packed Nissan Stadium. So we got into this big fight. I don't know, Ian, if you remember this, with Joe Rexroad. Because I sit on the side opposite the home bench.
Oh, trying to decide the percentage of fans that showed up.
Right. Because the press box is on the home sideline. And so I'm convinced that the people that sit on the home sideline are as reluctant to sell their tickets and not go to a game as any other spot in the building. So Joe was like, it was probably only 30% Bills fans. And I was like, it was definitely more than that. But again, I was on the visiting sideline. The fact that PK is telling you, man, this is the most I've ever seen it, means that even the home sideline was nuked by Viking fans.
It's almost like the Titans had to go into a silent count in the first half at one point.
A tier 3 fan base. A tier 3 fan base did that to you. That would be like the Colts doing that.
And then they started the skull thing at the end.
I did hear that come through the TV.
Yeah.
One texter says, your biggest problem is that you have this weird idea that the Titans are some great fan base. No one outside of Nashville gives a second thought to the Titans. Remove the one Super Bowl that you didn't win, and who is this franchise? Nashville has this weird idea that there's some premier team. I never said that. I never said that. I never said that the Titans were some premier team that is incredibly popular across the country. That I've never said that. But I have been to plenty Titan games in my life. And again, what we were witnessing from the other side of the river was something I've never seen before. And again, this was for the Vikings. I went to the Packers game. You didn't hear me complain that there were a lot of Packer fans there. Because again, the Packers are a tier 1 fan base. I expect that. I think the Titans are a tier 4 fan base. But that doesn't mean that they should have nobody show up to the game and everybody who has tickets should sell their tickets. Also, let me just state for the record, I saw in the YouTube chat, someone said, Jared, did you sell your tickets to Viking fans? And somebody else, the distinguished gentleman, my guy, said, of course he did. First of all, I did not sell my tickets to anybody. A friend reached out, asked if I had 4 tickets to the game. I did, and I gave them to her. Were they Viking fans? Probably. But I don't know, who. I gave them away. So I did not sell them to Viking fans. Did Viking fans sit in my seats? Probably. I mean, I got to tell you, I haven't invited people to the Titans game. I didn't go to the New England game. who was before New England? Indy. I didn't go to the Indy game. I'm not even asking people if they want to go to the game because I don't want people to have to give me an excuse for why they don't want to go to the game. Like, hey, the next home game's Jacksonville. Hey, you want to go? I got 4 tickets to the Titans and the Jags. You want to go? Man, I would, but my grandma has to pick her earwax out that night, so I don't think, I would, but I can't. I mean, that's what it is. Ty says they had Adam Amin and Greg Olson for the Lions and the Vikings game. The Vikings never get good announcers unless they play the Cowboys. Why? Because the Vikings are a mid-level franchise. And they took over your stadium. Like, is that not crazy? Is that not insane? And again, I think this is the fans telling management, screw this. What happened to all the money that they were going to spend this year? Remember when Amy said, Titan fans, sooner rather than later, I promise we're going to be good. We have Ran, and we have cap space, and we have a young quarterback. And Ran sucks. The quarterback sucks, although he did play his best game yesterday. And the cap space, your 2 corners are off at Club Med or something like that, because I certainly don't think they're anywhere near a football field. I mean, the big story that we have here with the corner is he faking an injury or not? 615-737-1025. We'll get back to your phones on this. But there is one thing yesterday that I do want to brag about. I do want to gloat about. I do. And I don't, if you don't believe now, you're just a hater. We'll get to it next. I'm going to company on 102.5 The Game.
On their long TD pass, it looked like it might be Baker, might be Hooker. What did you see happen on their long touchdown pass, the first TD?
The first one. Sorry, there's a lot of them. Oh, yeah, we pressured, so we were in a fire zone coverage. So there's space in those coverages, and we were right there on top of the quarterback. We were I thought they sacked them at first, and all of a sudden the ball comes out. But when you're in those coverages, there's lanes, and that's when you don't get home on those pressures, which we didn't. There's space in the defense, and they found the void. I think it was just a dagger route on the inside, and I can't recall who was in position and who wasn't, but then he made a play with his feet after that. So yeah, when you pressure like that, the idea is you got to get home, because there is a weakness in the coverage structure if you don't.
I just want to say something before we get back to your phones. That was on the Jordan Addison touchdown, the receiver that they drafted 12 picks after you took a guard with the 11th pick. The guard who's telling people, I don't want to get upset about the refs. Well, the refs did screw you. But how about Sam Darnold yesterday? Ladies and gentlemen, the Sam Chise. Gentry Estes, if you're listening to this, and I bet you probably are right now, you were right. P-Stum, if you're listening to this right now, and you're probably not, you were right. And Jared Stillman was right about Sam Darnold, because I watched Sam Darnold yesterday, and I hadn't watched a lot of Vikings whatever, but I watched Sam Darnold yesterday. I mean, the poise. Again, he's not Joe Burrow, so I'm not going to act like that's what he's going to be or whatever it's going to, but that's a starting quarterback right there. Derek, we're going to have a talk with Derek, because yesterday on the award-winning pregame show, Derek was like, well, I think he's really a backup who can win you a couple of games, kind of like Gardner Minshew. Is what Derek said. And I'm like, no, man. Like, Sam Darnold is one of the 20 best quarterbacks in the league right now. And Sam Darnold, this is what I truly believe when it comes to Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is just like Ryan Tannehill. If you put a good team around Ryan Tannehill's going to win you games. You give Ryan Tannehill a good coach, Ryan Tannehill is going to win games. Jared Goff was in LA with Todd Gurley and Sean McVay and Cooper Kupp, and everybody thought he was incredible. Then he goes to Detroit, where they have no team, and everyone thinks he sucks. Then they build up the team. They draft Penei Sewell. They draft Amon-Ra St. Brown. They develop those guys. They draft Jahmyr Gibbs. They draft Jamison Williams. They draft Sam Laporta. All of a sudden, they get Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator, year 2 with Jared Goff. And now he's a $55 million quarterback. Sam Darnold's the same. He's not Mahomes. He's not Allen. He's not Burrow. He's not Lamar. He's not Jaden Daniels or C.J. Stroud, who might become those guys. But he's a 27-year-old quarterback who's athletic enough to move, who's accurate, who's got a good arm, who understands the game, and has been to football hell and back. And I was right. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Tyler is up next here on the Viking fan infiltration at Nissan Stadium. Tyler, go ahead.
Hey, Jared. Can you hear me?
Hey, Tyler, go ahead.
Hey, you were right about Sam Darnold. Absolutely. You're right about a lot of things. I just wanted to ask you, I was at the Patriots game a couple weeks ago, and I was on home side, club level, and it was a lot of Patriots fans, and it was tough to see. We were outnumbered, even in our section. Love going to Titans games. Would love to watch a winning team at some point. But, man, hearing you talk about the amount of games that you have tickets for, and you personally I know you're an NFL voice, but you are here that you don't go to and you don't show up and support. I know you're a busy man. It kind of like you have the voice to put it out there for us to be there. A lot of people are listening to you. You're influential. You say a lot of things that people don't like. You say a lot of things that people do like. Showing up is one thing. So I want to know, like, man, if Jared Stillman's not showing up for us, then, what do we have there? at home games. So you've got those 4 seats. Would love to see you in them every week. That's all I got to say. I'll listen to
So
you.
here's what I'll say to that. Thank you for your call. Run a competent organization, and you'll see me at the games. I don't owe the Titans anything. The Titans owe me. That's how this works. This idea that I owe the Titans something is absurd. I mean, again, it's like the whole thing surrounding PT. This offseason, I kept saying they don't have a right tackle. And everybody told me, Bill Callahan will fix it. And I said, no, I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt with PT. I wasn't comfortable with PT the year before. So when they ended up having to scramble last second because he's unreliable and they had to go get Chris Hubbard and they, had to put that out there and, okay, well, don't make the same mistake twice. And then they did it. But everybody told me Bill Callahan would fix it. And I owed him the benefit of the doubt. And last year, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Andre Dillard, Aaron Brewer, who, again, I was like, he's a little tiny baby. And they're like, well, but he's actually better suited for center than he is for guard. And so, you'll see, Jared. Okay, fine. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And I saw Dillard and saw Brewer and saw what it was. And okay, I'm not doing that. So this year I didn't give him the benefit of the doubt. I kept saying they don't have a right tackle. They don't have a right tackle. They don't have a right tackle. But they knew better than I did, remember? Give Rand a chance, Jared. Look at the worst team in the league right now. I don't owe you anything. I do not owe you anything. I do not owe the Tennessee Titans anything. So if I don't think I owe the Tennessee Titans anything, and I get to choose what I do with my time, I would never tell another fan that you should feel obligated to support the Tennessee Titans. There was a game about 7 years ago. The Titans were playing Jacksonville. It was the last game of the year. Win and you're in. And the temperature that day was like 3 degrees. And I went to the game. And nobody wanted to go because it was so cold. And because, the Titans had lost 3 in a row and they were kind of stinking it up. And I remember we did the Music City Bowl. Ian, I think that's the year that Floyd and I actually called the game. We called the first half of Kentucky versus Northwestern.
Yeah, I can't remember which game that was.
And I remember there was a giant, those things that fly over the stadium with the messages or whatever. There was a giant plane that flew a banner that said, "Win and we're in. Get your tickets today." And I thought, boy, that is sad. That Northwestern, you think Northwestern Kentucky football fans go buy tickets to watch Titans and the Jags play in 3-degree weather? But I went to the game. Layered up. I mean, it was freaking cold. Parked, walked across the bridge, did the pregame show, walked back across the bridge, went to the game, froze my ass off. And when I saw the Titans make the playoffs, and this was on New Year's Eve, and again, I felt like the Titans were owed the support of their fans for giving us a team that made the playoffs that was on the verge of it to cheer for. That I feel obligated to support. This? PT? No, I'm not supporting that. And again, I'm glad what happened yesterday. I'm glad that the owner had to sit up there and see nothing but Viking fans in her stadium, because she's the one who caused all this when she fired the good general manager who was in first place. When she went Leroy Jenkins on this fan base, when she decided that winning and making the playoffs wasn't good enough, she decided to bring in the general manager from San Francisco who doesn't know ball. She decided to promote Chad Brinker's cancer-curing AI injury prevention model that has landed you Legarius Sneed. So you want to sit up here and say like, oh no, Jared, we want you to support the team and get others to support the team. This is not the elementary T-ball team that's sponsored by Johnny's Bar and Grill down the street. This is the NFL. And if you put out a product that is as crappy as the product, I today started the show commending the Titans for losing the game and saying, good job, Titans. The refs screwed you. The quarterback played well. The coach, got in the ear of the referee. I really liked it. Way to go, Titans. I said it yesterday was the best game they played all year. That's how bad it is now. You think I owe you? I owe the Titans? No. If anything, the Titans owe me because I've been right. I was right. Oh, Jared, just give Rand another chance. You'll see. Yeah. And if I had said, what was funny was I was talking about how the first moment where I realized that Rand didn't know what he was doing was over the Kevin Byard stuff. But the second moment, the biggest, oh my God, red alert, all hands to battle stations, was draft night when they took Levis and Spears and he got asked all those questions and he just stops in the middle of it and is like, this doesn't have to be negative. This is the best night of these kids' lives. And and I said, that is so minor league. That is so little league. This is the NFL. And I said, well, those picks were Levis and Spears, and I think everybody's pretty happy about Levis and Spears. And I'm like, you hope. But Levis and Spears both don't do it. I mean, but that's what we have to get it. No. You put out a product that's worth people going to and spending their Sundays where they got to park in other places because you're building a new stadium to make all your money. You give them something worth coming to. Bob says, do the Titans care if you buy tickets and don't show up? Again, if you own the team, would you be happy to get out there and see nothing but Viking fans on Sunday? There is an ego that kind of comes through some of this. So, again, I don't owe the Titans anything, and I don't think any Titan fan should be obligated to sit back and support a team that is incompetent. I don't think you have to do that. I think you're allowed to do with your Sundays and do with your money and do with your time whatever you want to do. One person in the YouTube chat says, Jared will be the parent who freaks out when I guess he's going to say when his son, but left that. When his son brings home a B+. Well, let me just say this. Again, I went to the Jacksonville game in 2017. It was the last regular season game coached by Mike Mularkey because apparently making the playoffs for the first time in 10 years and winning a playoff game for the first time in 13 years wasn't good enough around here. But not for me. I remembered the Wisenhunt era and the Munchak era. And I was thankful that the Titans finally had a team run by people who knew what they were doing and had given us a playoff team to support. So I went out there in 1 degree weather. Most Titan fans didn't. And I supported the team. You want to talk about a B+? You guys wanted that coach fired and got your wish. So don't tell me about, Jared's celebrating a B+. No, you're an F. And I'm not wasting my time on an F. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
When you engaged with the officials so harshly after the end zone call, was there dialogue there? Were they not answering it? The crowd certainly seemed to like what you were doing.
Yeah, no, they get in those moments and they just let you yell at them, and they don't really say much. So at that point, the call had already been made. We already had a first down, so I figured I'd let them hear it. It wasn't going to cost me anything at that point.
So that was Brian Callahan. I believe the officiating cost him the game. So I've just seen this now. Steve Lehman at Channel 5, they have video from the sideline yesterday where Brian Callahan, with 3 minutes to go in the game, calls Ran Carthon over to him and asks, how many plays have we had taken away from us today? I actually wonder if there's a I just saw this. Kind of a follow-up question I'd have is, what's Rance Carthon supposed to do about that? So with 3 minutes to go, he walks over and he says, hey, come here. I want to, let's do something about what are they actually going to do? But those refs are bad. And I guess Peter Skoronski can't say only terrible teams complain about the refs since, well, his coach is complaining about the refs. That's it for us. We're out of here. The Commodore Hour is next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow too.